Chapter 48-41. After hearing her words, Pudding pinched Xiao Tuanchuan's little face. Okay. I know I can't hide anything from you. Agent. Why do I feel like you're more and more like Black Widow from the Avengers? No. That name is so unlucky. I don't want to be Black Widow. I'll have countless handsome men in the future. You're so young, but you have big dreams. Pudding laughed. Don't change the topic. You haven't answered me yet. I actually have another question. Pudding, you're not obsessed with looks. You shouldn't like a high-profile guy like Liao Mukin. So, can you tell me why you've been taking care of him for the past 2 years? Xiao Tuanchuan played with the lighter in her hand and asked Pudding in a low voice. She had been curious about this for a long time and had done a lot of research on Liao Mukin, but she couldn't find anything. However, this didn't seem like Pudding's style. After a while, Pudding sighed slightly. He's like an old friend of mine. An old friend? Don't tell me he's your idol in kindergarten. No. Then where's your old friend? You can go find the real one. Why are you looking for a fake? Xiao Tuanchuan didn't know much about relationships because she had never liked a boy, so she didn't know what it was like. She couldn't figure it out with theory. My old friend is gone. Pudding was very sad. Hearing her words, Xiao Tuanchuan immediately understood her cousin. She patted her cousin's shoulder and comforted her, let bygones be bygones. Life is just a long-distance train. Sooner or later, we'll get off, and you'll finally see your old friend at the terminal. Pudding nodded. What about Wei Yunchu? Cousin. I heard you two were childhood friends. We haven't seen each other in 5 years. I don't even know what he's like now. Pudding smiled sadly. Pudding's personality was very similar to Qin Chu's in many ways. Qin Chu could endure being abroad for 7 years without looking for Huamin. Of course, Pudding could also ignore Wei Yunchu's situation for 5 years. She didn't even pay attention to Weibo or Instagram, let alone see his photos. Xiao Tuanchuan leaned close to Pudding's ear and whispered, if it's because of that woman called Tian, I can help you kill her. It's a piece of cake. Pudding was not surprised that Xiao Tuanchuan would have such an idea, and she knew that she was definitely not joking. After all, Xiao Tuanchuan had killed people before. Growing up in the background of Lu Yan and Xiao Fei, she wasn't a flower in a greenhouse. Pudding was already used to bloodshed, so she only needed to nod her head. Then, Tian would disappear from this world at any moment. But she wouldn't do that. No, it's not as simple as Tian between us. Don't do anything to her. It's my own problem. I haven't adjusted my mentality yet. Xiao Tuanchuan was about to say something when Little Bean yelled from afar, Pudding, Tuanchuan, come and have some steak. The two smiled tacitly and didn't continue the conversation. Instead, they went back to their seats. Lu Yan's arrival brought a smile to Huamin's face. He hadn't been this happy in a long time. Sis, are you still going to be that lousy director? Is it fun? Is being a lousy doctor your lifelong dream? Lu Yan asked Huamin as she ate her steak. In fact, she didn't want her sister to continue working here. She hoped that her sister would visit her more often. I'm used to it. After all these years, I have developed a deep affection for South Side. Huamin smiled. When Dad comes tomorrow, you can invite him to be a special professor at your hospital. He's already so old, but he still runs around the world and makes people worry. Then, Lu Yan looked around the room smugly. Kids, what do you think of this idea? Chapter 48-42. Little Bean nodded first. That's a great idea. I support you, Auntie. After all these years, little bean, you still love to flatter people. Qiao Yuanyuan chuckled. Go away. I'm serious. I really want Grandpa to stay. Little Bean was overjoyed at the thought of Grandpa staying with her. I don't agree. I want Grandpa to go to Russia, Qiao Tuanchuan said domineeringly. It's good for Grandpa to stay with me in Germany. He can do some research on my project. Qin Guoguo also began to fight for favor. You guys, all have your own reasons. That's enough. Don't dream about it. Let's wait for your grandpa to come and see where he likes to stay, Huamin said. Qiao Fei suddenly had a flash of inspiration and had a suggestion. Since the atmosphere is so good, why don't we do this? Tomorrow, Daddy will come over. You all can show off your skills and show your grandfather what you're capable of. Then, whoever can persuade him with their skills can stay there. Lu Yen secretly pinched Qiao Fei. Why are you so mean? You know Dad likes people who are good at medicine. Out of all the kids, Yuan is the best. Aren't you trying to steal her from your sister's family? Qiao Yuan was full of confidence. She looked at her parents with a smile and didn't say anything. If one were to say that Huamian's medical skills had reached a freakish level, then Qiao Yuan was like the new waves of the Yangtze River overtaking the old. It was said that Qiao Yuan could make all kinds of fever medicine, cold medicine, and anti-inflammatory medicine by herself since she was 5. When she was 8, she could dissect corpses by herself and make perfect incisions. She was someone that many famous medical schools in the world fought over. However, Lu Yen had too many enemies and didn't want her daughter to go abroad. She could only send her to the Russian military academy. Qiao Tuanchuan specialized in military equipment and Qiao Yuanyuan was a military doctor. So, at 12 years old, she was already an excellent doctor. Professor Lu would personally guide her every year. The little girl's medical skills were perfect. So, Qiao Fei's suggestion was indeed unfair. Little Bean was unhappy when she heard her auntie say that. Little Bean was also a medical student, but she wasn't as good as Qiao Yuanyuan. She had just finished all the courses in advance and worked as an intern with her mother at Southside. Auntie, this is really unfair. How about this? Let my mom participate as well. If Grandpa thinks that my mom's medical skills are better than Yuan's, she can stay at South Hill Manor. You're a smart little girl. You're good at scheming. Lu Yen was amused. The night snack passed in laughter. It was not until 3:00 in the morning that everyone returned to their rooms. Pudding took a shower and went back to bed. It was almost dawn. Just as she was about to sleep with him, she received a WeChat message. Morning, boss. One look at the tone and she knew that it was from Liao Mukin. Pudding, it's really early. What are you doing this morning instead of sleeping? Liao Mukin, I just came back from my morning run. Pudding, so you were too excited from running and couldn't sleep, so you harassed the boss. Liao Mukin, haha, I wouldn't dare. I'm afraid that my boss will deduct my salary. Pudding, good. Go to sleep. Liao Mukin, boss, didn't you give me a day off? I'll rest for a few days. Pudding, what's wrong? You don't want to. Liao Mukin, no. I mean, I'm bored at home. How about we go hiking together tomorrow? I heard that the maple leaves on Dragon Tiger Mountain are all red and beautiful. Pudding, so you think I'm free? I'm free to go hiking with you. Chapter 48-43. Liao Mukin, I can wait for you to get off work. Let's go together and see the night view. Pudding, I have a lot of guests at my house. You know how busy I am these days. Liao Mukin, I know, your coming of age ceremony. Pudding, I'm going to bed now. Pudding didn't continue talking to Liao Mukin about the coming-of-age ceremony because she was still wondering if she should ask him to come. She definitely couldn't go hiking. Xiao Tuanchuan had been right for the past 2 years. Pudding was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. She had taken care of Liao Mukin a lot. If it weren't for GK Entertainment's support and money, Liao Mukin wouldn't have become so popular. In Pudding's eyes, Liao Mukin was a very promiscuous person who liked to flirt with girls. It was said that before he became famous, he had countless scandals at school. After he became famous, he flirted with all kinds of popular actresses and formed a couple. Although he didn't have a real girlfriend yet, Pudding knew that he didn't lack women. She even often scolded him for looking weak. Liao Mukin didn't seem very attentive to Pudding. He would occasionally tease his boss, but sometimes he would seriously ask her out. However, Pudding almost never agreed. Apart from work, she wouldn't have too much contact with this guy. The next morning, Pudding had a meeting in the morning, so she ate breakfast with Qin Chu and left early. When they left, no one was up yet. Pudding drove the Lamborghini while Qin Chu sat in the passenger seat. The father and daughter looked very handsome. At the entrance of GK, Dad, you can go back to the office first. I'll go to the publicity department to check the schedule. I'll see you in the conference room. Okay. Qin Chu nodded and said goodbye to his daughter at the door. He went straight to the top floor and she went to the publicity department. Pudding didn't expect to hear such explosive news as soon as she walked in. Perhaps the employees didn't expect her to come so early. As soon as Pudding walked to the door, she heard 2 women's voices. President Qin suppressed the news of Liao Mukin getting into a fight at a bar. Even if the media heard about it, they didn't dare to expose it. I heard President Qin even gave Liao Mukin a break. Yeah, I also heard that Liao Mukin got into a fight because of President Qin. Oh. Really? Are you jealous? I don't know. Anyway, I heard that one of the people in the bar was from a prestigious family. After drinking, he kept bragging that he wanted to sleep with President Qin. He even said that if he couldn't sleep with her, he would force himself on her. Liao Mukin has feelings for President Qin, so of course, he wouldn't listen to such words. He rushed up and I heard that he gave the guy a concussion. Oh my God, this guy is so hardworking, but President Qin doesn't like him. No matter how famous he is, he's just an actor. President Qin is one of the heirs of GK and has a high chance of taking over his position in the future. He's a billionaire, good-looking, and has a great personality. I don't think Liao Mukin is good enough for President Qin. Pudding didn't continue listening. She just felt that it was because of her that Liao Mukin got into a fight that day. However, she still spoke ill of him, so she did feel a little guilty. His good intentions seemed to have been taken for granted. Pudding quietly left the room and didn't enter the publicity department. She didn't want to be embarrassed. She sighed slightly and called Liao Mukin's agent. After learning the whole story, she felt even more conflicted. She was nice to Liao Mukin because he looked like Su Yu. However, if Liao Mukin fell in love with her because of this, then, she didn't want to see that happen. After all, she didn't like him. At the entrance of the Sea City Airport, Jiang Xiaowei parked her black Porsche Cayenne on the side of the road. The handsome boy, who was wearing a black sunscreen and carrying a BV travel bag, slowly took off his sunglasses. Son, get in the car. Jiang Xiaowei's eyes were full of motherly love. Wei Yunchu returned to China for the first time in 5 years. Chapter 48-44. Wei Yunchu opened the door to the passenger seat, threw his travel bag into the back seat, and left quietly with Jiang Xiaowei. Other than Jiang Xiaowei, no one knew about Wei Yunchu's return. He didn't inform anyone in advance, not even when he was drinking with Qin Guogua in Germany. Why would someone who hadn't come back for 5 years suddenly come back? The answer was obvious. It was for the twins' coming-of-age ceremony. Or rather, Wei Yunchu wanted to attend Pudding's 18th birthday. Does Pudding know you're back? Of course not. Mom, don't tell anyone. You want to give her a surprise. Jiang Xiaowei was in a good mood as she drove with her son back. Wei Yunchu pursed his lips. Actually, I don't know if my return is a surprise or a shock to her. Son, don't say that. Actually, between you and Pudding, Mom, let us solve our own problems. Hearing her son's words, Jiang Xiaowei knew that her son didn't want the elders to interfere and didn't want to put Pudding in a difficult position. Where's Tian Tian? She came back early and didn't go to my aunt's house. Wei Yunchu pointed at Wei Ying's house. Jiang Xiaowei froze. No. I saw your aunt yesterday and she said Tian Tian was in Germany. Wei Yunchu didn't look surprised. That's her business. He never cared about Tian Tian. 5 years ago, Wei Yunchu went abroad. That night, Tian Tian made a last-minute decision and Shen Mingxi spent a lot of money to help her with the troublesome procedures. Over the years, everyone knew that Shen Mingxi was good to Tian Tian because of Hui Yanyan's death. After all, Hui Yanyan was in Shen Mingxi's hands for Wei Ying. So, that couple always felt guilty for Hui Yanyan's orphan. That was why she had a good life all these years. All the elders knew that Tian Tian liked Wei Yunchu. But only Pudding and Wei Yunchu knew that Tian Tian didn't really like Wei Yunchu. She just liked to compete with Pudding. In short, she liked whatever Pudding liked. Over the years, she followed Pudding's hairstyle. Pudding was wearing the same style of clothes as her, and she wanted to buy the same clothes. Tian Tian had changed from a scheming bitch to a scheming bitch because of her desire to compete with others. That was why Wei Yunchu liked her. Wei Yunchu lived in his own luxurious apartment in the United States. There were maids, butlers, and bodyguards. It was heavily guarded. Tian Tian, on the other hand, lived in the single apartment on campus with other students. Because they weren't in the same department, they didn't see each other often. Occasionally, Tian Tian would come to find Wei Yunchu, but he would avoid meeting her. Later, he heard that Tian Tian was very close to a foreigner and they even moved out to live together. Not long after, he was beaten to the point that he was hospitalized. However, he didn't dare to tell his family about it. It was Wei Yunchu who brought the bodyguards to send her to the hospital and beat up her violent boyfriend. Perhaps out of gratitude, Tian Tian didn't stick to Wei Yunchu as much after that. In school, she got along well with the other Chinese students. He had heard about Tiantian's return to China from others. It seemed that not only did she come back, but she also didn't tell her family. This woman was really something. Do you want to go home first or go to your dad's company? Jiang Xiaowei tilted her head and asked her son. Before Wei Yunchu could speak, the female host's voice sounded on the small TV in the car. At 10 a.m. this morning, Mr. Qin Chu, the president of GK Corporation, and Miss Qin Zhaozhao, the executive president of GK Entertainment, held a new jewelry product launch at Kaiwei Hotel. Popular stars Liao Mukin and Han Yueyao both attended. Let's take a look at the scene. Wei Yunchu's eyes were glued to the screen as he stared at the cold girl sitting beside Qin Chu. Chapter 48-45. At the Grand Hyatt Hotel. After the product launch, Qin Chu looked at his watch. Take them out for dinner. I have to meet a client later. Okay, Dad. After the father and daughter hurriedly finished the product launch, Qin Chu left first. Pudding brought Mu Chen, Han Yueyao, and a few newbies that the company wanted to promote. In the limousine, Pudding sat next to Han Yueyao while the other celebrities sat on the edge. Thank you for your hard work today. What do you want to eat? My treat. Pudding looked up and asked everyone. The newbies didn't dare to say anything and were all polite. President Qin, it's up to you. Auntie Yao Yao, what about you? Han Yueyao was in her 30s, almost 40. She had grown from a newbie to a veteran star. Her appearance fee was as high as 80 million yuan and she had participated in many big foreign productions. However, her love life had always been a mystery. It was said that she had a strange disease and forgot the man she used to like. After so many years of searching and meeting many people, she felt that something was wrong. In the blink of an eye, Han Yueyao was in her 30s, but she was still alone. She lived in a billion-yuan mansion and drove a 10 million yuan sports car. However, she still felt that she was missing something. Han Yueyao's agent, who had been with her for many years, became her rumored husband. I'm fine. I'm not very hungry. Where's Liao? Han Yueyao glanced at Liao Mukin. I want to eat at President Qin's house. I heard that South Hill Manor is very big. I've never been there before. Hearing Liao Mukin's flippant words, everyone laughed. Han Yueyao also laughed. South Hill Manor is indeed big and has a lot of delicious food. But it's too late to go now. Don't we have an event in the afternoon? Han Yueyao declined on Pudding's behalf. Otherwise, would she really take these people home to have dinner? The answer was no. South Hill Manor was full of important guests. The twins' coming-of-age ceremony was imminent, so she couldn't take irrelevant people home. Do you want to go to Heidaleo? Xia Mo, Luo Shi, Jin Sei, what do you think? Pudding didn't give them a chance to choose and made the decision herself. We're fine with anything. President Qin, you decide. The newbies naturally listened to their boss. Okay. I haven't had hot pot for a long time. Han Yueyao nodded. Boss, if I don't go, can you reimburse me? Liao Mukin tilted his head and looked at Pudding with a smirk. It was as if teasing the boss was a particularly fun thing to do. In the entire GK Entertainment, he was the only one who dared to speak to his boss like this. After all, he didn't need to worry about being fired because he was too valuable. Sure, I'll give you 30 yuan. You can go out and eat, Pudding said casually as she looked down at the information in her hands. 30. Boss, you're so generous. Tell me, what can I buy with 30 yuan? Liao Mukin retorted. Malatang, hot and sour noodles, scallion pancakes, instant noodles. And you can add a few more eggs, Pudding retorted. Boss, you're indeed a businessman. You're so smart. But I still want to go to Heidaleo with you. Pudding took her artists to a nearby hot pot restaurant and went straight into a private room. Pudding put down her handbag and went to the washroom to touch up her makeup. Then, suddenly, she felt her heart race. It was as if something was going to happen. It had been a day and she felt uneasy for no reason. There were only 2 days left until the coming-of-age ceremony. Would that person come? What would happen after he came? Pudding looked at herself in the mirror, her eyes confused. Chapter 48-46. On the busy road, a low-key luxury car drove by. Do you want to eat Heidaleo? Wei Liao asked his son. When he woke up this morning, his left eyelid kept twitching. At the time, he thought it was funny and wondered if something good was going to happen. After all, when his left eyelid twitched, something good was going to happen. Later, when he got busy at work, he didn't pay much attention to it. It wasn't until his wife took his son to the company that Wei Liao was dumbfounded. Then, he couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised. No matter what the reason was, Wei Yunchu didn't come back to China for 5 years. As a parent, they definitely felt uncomfortable. Now that his son came back without warning and even showed up at the company, Wei Liao was naturally very excited. Wei Yunchu's personality was completely different from Gao Buiyuan's. When Gao Buiyuan was bored, he would argue with his father or joke around with him. Wei Yunchu had always been very sensible, super sensible, and had a very close relationship with his father. Therefore, when Wei Yunchu first went abroad, Wei Liao really wanted to visit him. He even took time out to visit Wei Yunchu in the States with Jiang Xiaowei 5 times. Basically, they went once every 2 months. It was lunch break, so Wei Liao immediately put down his work and took his wife and son out for lunch. When they passed by Haidaleo, he even asked his son if he wanted to eat. Neither he nor Jiang Xiaowei noticed that a limousine was parked in front of the hot pot restaurant. It was the car of the president of GK Entertainment, Pudding's car. She was here too. Wei Yunchu's gaze deepened. Was he going to meet her in this way? What would it be like after they met? What would her expression be like? Would she be happy to see him come back? After a few seconds, Wei Yunchu shook his head. Dad, I don't want to eat hot pot. Okay, then let's go somewhere else. In the end, Wei Liao took his wife and son to a famous Sichuan restaurant to eat the famous pickled fish. Wei Yunchu looked at the familiar and bustling streets, his heart filled with emotions. Son, why are you back so suddenly? Jiang Xiaowei glared at her husband. You already know the answer. Wei Yunchu smiled faintly and said nothing. Does Pudding know that you're back? Sure enough, this dad of his was a little nosy. Wei Yunchu pursed his lips. She doesn't know. Then, when are you leaving? 3 days later, Wei Yunchu said. Wei Liao and Jiang Xiaowei were both stunned. What's the rush? 3 days later. Isn't that the night of Pudding and Little Bean's coming-of-age ceremony? Yes, I flew to Jingdu at 2:00 in the morning, then transferred to Berlin. You're in such a hurry. It's only been 3 days. It's too much. Can't you stay for a few more days? Jiang Xiaowei was reluctant to part with her son. Her eyes were red. Wei Yunchu reached out his big hands and hugged his mother's shoulders warmly.
I also want to stay for a few more days, but there are really a lot of things to do at school. Didn't I tell you? I signed up for a lot of classes this semester and even worked as an assistant for our tutor. I don't want to delay the progress of the whole group because of personal reasons. Wei Yunchu was an extremely independent person. In the 5 years he had been abroad, he had never asked his parents for help because he couldn't solve anything. Never. Even though he was only 18 or 19 years old, which was the same age as Pudding, he looked very mature. Even many mature adults didn't have his wisdom and skills. Have you prepared a present for Pudding's coming-of-age ceremony? Jiang Xiaowei looked at her son with heartache. Jiang Xiaowei had watched Pudding grow up, so she knew the child's personality too well. Therefore, even though she really wanted to help the 2 kids get married, she couldn't do anything about it, not even Huamian.
Chapter 48-47. Wei Yunchu nodded. What gift is it? Jiang Xiaowei asked her son. It's a secret. He chuckled. The family of 3 finally managed to have a meal despite their busy schedule. On the other side, it was also very lively. After Lu Yan came, Little Bean didn't go to work and begged her mother to take the day off. In the morning, Huamin drove to South Side for a meeting, but Little Bean stayed in bed until 9 a.m. Then, she got up to eat breakfast. At this time, she found that Chao Tuanchuan and Chao Yuanyuan had already run 10 kilometers around South Hill Manor. The 2 sisters were wearing long-sleeved sportswear. One was black, and the other was white. Chao Tuanchuan was more resolute, so she wore black. Chao Yuanyuan was more introverted, so she wore white. It was very clean. The two faces were exactly the same, but they were different from Pudding and Little Bean. Pudding was on the skinny side, while Little Bean was chubbier, so it was easier to recognize them. But Xiao Tuanchuan and Xiao Yuanyuan were exactly the same in height, figure, and appearance. If it weren't for their different clothes, they wouldn't be able to tell Little Bean apart. I say, when my auntie named you guys, she was too casual. Little Bean suddenly sighed. What do you mean? Xiao Yuanyuan looked at Little Bean with a smile, holding a towel in her hand. My sister and I, although our names are the same, Chow Chow Moo. But we have a source. Do you know the ancient poem, Immortal at the Magpie Bridge? If two people love each other for a long time, why would they be together day and night? At that time, my mommy missed my daddy, so she named them Chow Chow Moo. It's so poetic. You two are Tuan Tuan and Yuan Yuan. Little Bean complained more than once. She always thought that her auntie was a smart and thoughtful person. Why did she name her children so casually? My mom said that we should name them casually so that they'll be easy to raise. They can't be too weird or they'll have a bad life, Xiao Tuanchuan said. Xiao Yuanyuan nodded. Although our names aren't that poetic, Tuan 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 and Yuan Yuan is a good name. It means that our family is together. I like it. Okay. As long as you two like it. What else can I say? Little Bean complained like an adult as she drank her yogurt. I heard that your boyfriend is coming back today. Xiao Yuanyuan asked her. Yeah, I'll pick him up later, Little Bean said happily. Xiao Tuanchuan immediately rolled his eyes. You drive. Are you sure? Ahem. I'll ask my driver to pick me up. Is that okay? It seemed that Little Bean's driving skills were a secret that the whole family knew. It's too troublesome to find a driver. I can go with you. Xiao Yuanyuan smiled. Really? Don't tell me you have something to ask of me. One who was unaccountably solicitous was hiding evil intentions. Little Bean understood this principle. What can I ask of you? You're not as rich as Pudding, and you're not as good at martial arts as Tuan Tuan. Xiao Yuanyuan continued to laugh. You make it sound like I'm worthless. No. How can you be worthless? At least you know how to eat, Xiao Yuanyuan. How dare you insult me? Do you think I won't show you how lovey-dovey I am? Little Bean pointed at Xiao Yuanyuan's nose and said confidently. Xiao Yuanyuan, sis, that's all you've got. Even Qin Guogua couldn't stand it anymore and was sweating. Ha! Xiao Yuanyuan, you're only 12. Do you have a driver's license? You can drive. Little Bean finally realized that although Xiao Yuanyuan could drive, she didn't have a driver's license. She was only 12 years old. Although she was 165 meters tall, she was still underage. Chapter 48. Xiao Yuanyuan smiled slightly. I drive. I don't need a driver's license. Hey, if you guys leave, what will I do at home? Xiao Tuanchuan suddenly realized how bored she would be if the two left. Why don't you continue to fight with my brother? Little Bean suggested. Sister, do you want to die? Qin Guogua covered Little Bean's mouth from behind. Even though he won last night's competition, he was still exhausted, okay? Xiao Tuanchuan was a scary girl. Qin Guogua didn't want to fight with her. Ha. I have an idea. Tuanchuan, you can play with Tang Tianjiao later. Little Bean began to come up with another idea. Tang Tianjiao. Who? Xiao Tuanchuan was confused. Brother, call Tianjiao later and ask him to come. I think Tuanchuan will like him. I hope so. Qin Guogua smiled wickedly. At this moment, Tang Tianjiao just got up at home. He had classes today, but he refused to go to school. In the morning, Tang Chuan was so angry because of this that he almost used the family law. In the end, Qin Ning spoke up and let him go. Other children would go out with their parents on the weekend, eat, and go to the amusement park. Tang Tianjiao's family was special. From time to time, a boy or girl would come to fight with him. If he got into more trouble, he would be beaten by his parents. After a beating, he would behave for a while. Among the children, Tang Tianjiao was beaten the most. He was indeed the naughtiest. Even Huamin was confused. To be honest, she had never seen such a naughty child. Tang Tianjiao woke up in the morning and refused to get up. He wanted to go to South Hill Manor and play with his uncle. Then, he received a call from Qin Guogua, who invited him over. He said that he had a new friend. The kid picked up the phone and got up quickly. He dressed himself up as a devil and then asked the driver to take him to South Hill Manor. He didn't even wait for his mother. He complained that Qin Ning was too slow. On the other side, Xiao Yuanyuan picked a white Maserati from the garage of South Hill Manor. Then, he took Little Bean out of the house. Little Bean was really lazy. She didn't even want to put on makeup to pick up her boyfriend. She changed into a Chanel dress and went out. Fortunately, she had a good foundation and exquisite facial features, so even if she didn't dress up, she still looked beautiful. Where's Yuanyuan? Qiao Fei came back from his morning run with Lu Yan and was surprised to see his daughter missing. They went out with Little Bean. He went out with Little Bean. Lu Yan was surprised. Yeah, Little Bean's driving skills are terrible, so Yuan drove to pick up Little Bean's boyfriend. Yuan is driving. Lu Yan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Can Little Bean handle Yuan's driving? Qiao Fei was worried about Little Bean. Hearing this, Qin Guogua could not help but ask, Auntie, is Sister Yuan bad at driving? No, she drove very well. Lu Yan smiled, but her smile was complicated. Qin Guogua vaguely felt that his second sister was going to be in trouble. As expected, 10 minutes later, after getting off the mountain road and onto the highway, Xiao Yuanyuan drove the car until it flew. Little Bean's stomach churned as if she was on a roller coaster. Sister Little Bean, do you think I'm driving too slowly? The engine was so loud that Xiao Yuanyuan had to shout. Little Bean covered her mouth to stop herself from vomiting. She yelled, You didn't drive too slowly. You flew too fucking low, Xiao Yuanyuan. Chapter 48-49. At Heideleo Restaurant. Pudding was absent-minded during the meal. She checked her cell phone frequently, worried that something might happen at home. Pudding, are you in a hurry? If you're in a hurry, you can leave first. I'll pay the bill, Han Huiyao comforted her. I'll pay the bill. It's okay, Auntie Han. Boss, your coming-of-age ceremony is coming soon. Can you date after you turn 18? Liao Mukin leaned back in his chair with a smirk on his face. Pudding's face turned cold immediately. I mean, you're finally over 18. Will the chairman allow you to date? Liao Mukin realized his question was inappropriate and immediately corrected himself. It's none of your business. Pudding didn't want to answer such a boring question. If this guy didn't look like Handsome Sue, she swore she would have thrown him into the hot pot. After the meal, Pudding took out her wallet and handed it to a newcomer named Xia Mo. I'm going to the washroom. Please pay the bill for me. Thank you. Okay, President Qin. The girl took Pudding's wallet and walked toward the bar. Pudding went into the washroom to reapply her lipstick. She was surprised to see an acquaintance here. The girl was surprised to see her as well. Pudding, long time no see. Her voice was sweet and so was her face. Over the years, she had undergone many successful plastic surgeries, but she wasn't the same as she used to be. Pudding stared at her face and didn't speak. The girl smiled. Hee hee. I'm sorry. I shouldn't call you by your nickname in such a formal setting. Should I call you Miss Chin or President Chin? Tian Tian, long time no see, Pudding said. Of course not. With my status, how can I offend a rich young lady like you? Tian Tian mocked with a smile. Are you curious? I'm back in the country. Is Yunchu back? She looked at Pudding with a smile. Pudding still didn't speak. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. Yunchu is very busy. He doesn't have time to come back. After all, nothing is more important than his studies. Tian Tian smiled brightly. What are you trying to say? Pudding looked at Tian Tian's face and felt nauseous. Pudding had a good memory. She still remembered when Tian Tian was little, Auntie Hui Yan Yan took her to South Hill Manor to play. At that time, the relationship between the adults and Hui Yan Yan's life and Tian Tian's were not bad. After so many things had happened, Tian Tian was no longer the same as before. At least, the innocence and childish, the chilly innocence in her eyes was replaced. Tian Tian Shi used her mother's death to make Shen Mingxi and Wei Ying bear the guilt in their hearts. Tian Tian, Tian Yan, Tian Tian, and treated Huishi even wanted to be with Wei Yunchu. Pudding had seen this many times 5 years ago. 5 years ago, Tian Tian had been studying in the capital. However, it was said that she had developed a psychological disorder and did not feel safe, so she came back. Han Hua and Hun's Hua house. Naturally, she had more opportunities to interact with Wei Yunchu. Then, she kept creating conflicts between the two of them. Hua Pudding and Wei Yunchu broke up completely. They blacklisted each other and didn't contact each other for 5 years. Pudding hadn't seen Tian Tian for 5 years. Seeing her now, she felt suffocated for no reason. Pudding, that Liao Mukin is good. He's perfect for you. Don't think about my Yunchu again. You too, our history. Tian Tian stared at Pudding's face and said word by word. Chapter 48-50. Then, Pudding suddenly laughed. Her laughter was unfathomable. What are you laughing at? Tian Tian's eyes gradually turned cold. She had lost all her patience with Pudding. I'm just laughing at you. After so many years, you're still as stupid as ever. You're telling me this, which proves how insecure you are. 5 years have passed. Didn't you go abroad with him? Why don't you even have the most basic sense of security now? Also, you're warning me. Who do you think you are? Even if I don't go to Wei Yunchu, he still won't like you. You don't seem to realize this fact. Tian Tian sneered. You're mistaken. My meaning is clear. Yunchu doesn't have to be with me. He can be with anyone. As long as that person isn't you, I'm fine with it. Oh. Really? If you put it that way, then I really want to make things difficult for you. Take a guess. If I take the initiative to call him and invite him back to my coming-of-age ceremony, then, will we go back to how we were before? Will he not come back to America and leave you alone abroad? Hearing Pudding's words, Tian Tian's expression changed drastically. She was also frightened. Qin Zhao Zhao, don't be so cheap. Hearing that Pudding was going to call Wei Yunchu, Tian Tian was completely flustered. All these years, the two of them had been in a cold war. If Pudding really couldn't resist calling him first, then Wei Yunchu wouldn't be able to resist. Then Wei Yunchu must have been unable to resist the temptation. After all, everyone knew how well he used to treat Pudding. That was why Tian Tian used the word cheap to insult Pudding. Pudding wasn't angry. She had always been calm. After hearing Tian Tian's words, she only smiled. Then, she looked at the mirror in the bathroom and adjusted her makeup. You're wrong. I've always been expensive. Then, Pudding walked away in her high heels, leaving a pale Tian Tian behind. After Pudding left, she was a little flustered. Then, she took out her phone and sent Wei Yunchu a WeChat message. Yunchu, what are you doing? After a while, there was no reply. Gritting her teeth, Tian Tian sent another message. Yunchu, I miss you. When I get back, I'll treat you to steak. She still didn't get a reply. Wei Yunchu received a WeChat message, but when he saw that it was from her, he just glanced at it indifferently and didn't reply. In an elegant private room of a Sichuan restaurant with Wei Liao and Jiang Shaowei, Wei Yunchu didn't have a good appetite, so he only drank some water. A black custom-made phone was placed beside his hand. 5 minutes ago, Gao Buiyuan updated his WeChat moments. Pudding and Wei Yunchu had blocked each other, but Pudding still had Pudding's WeChat. Later, Little Bean blacklisted Wei Yunchu as well. He only had Qin Guogua, Gao Buiyuan, and Tang Tianjiao's contact information. Therefore, whenever Gao Buiyuan posted something, he would be the first to see it. Wei Yunchu was also the closest to Gao Buiyuan. 5 minutes ago, Gao Buiyuan posted a short video. In the video, Little Bean was running toward him. Gao Buiyuan added, "We've been online dating for 3 years, and we finally meet today. Wow, why is she fatter than in the photos?" As soon as he finished speaking, he was punched by Little Bean. He was such a clown. It looked like they were slandering Little Bean, but in fact, they were showing off their love. As Gao Buiyuan and Little Bean's WeChat friends, he had to get used to the fact that they could show off their love at any time. Wei Yunchu suddenly envied them. If it weren't for that incident 5 years ago, he and Pudding would be very close today. Chapter 48-51. In the VIP passageway of the airport, Little Bean pounced on him and kissed him crazily. From afar, she looked like a happy husky, attracting the attention of passers-by. Gao Buiyuan didn't bring anything with him because he was on leave. He only had a black Burberry bag in his hand. He had also changed out of his police uniform into a casual outfit. Gao Buiyuan wasn't as hot-tempered as his mother, nor was he as gossipy as his father. Especially when he smiled, he felt that the whole world was beautiful. Gao Buiyuan was the least good-looking among this group of children. In fact, he wasn't bad, but he couldn't compare to Pudding, Little Bean, and Wei Yunchu. Gao Buiyuan's eyes weren't big, and his facial features weren't that exquisite, but he was still good-looking. Little Bean had always thought that he was a warm man. He had done all kinds of embarrassing things for Little Bean over the years. Even when he was often pranked, he wasn't angry. Even the cold and arrogant Pudding envied her sister because in all these years, she had never seen Little Bean and Gao Buiyuan quarrel. It was always Little Bean who was angry, and Gao Buiyuan would coax her unconditionally and tirelessly. The elders felt sorry for Buiyuan. Even Huamin and Qin Chu often warned Little Bean not to bully Buiyuan. But was Buiyuan really that easy to bully? No. Gao Buiyuan studied at the Public Security University, and his major was one of the best. He was agile and quick-witted. Before he graduated, he helped his professor solve a murder case and performed well. Such a person was only afraid of Little Bean because he liked her and didn't want her to be sad. Looking at Little Bean and Gao Buiyuan being so intimate, Xiao Yuanyuan shook her head and sighed. Why do I feel like I shouldn't have come today? Let Xiao Tuanchuan come. Yuanyuan, come here. Let me introduce you, Little Bean was done acting coquettishly and then remembered that she had a cousin. She pulled Chow Yuan over and was about to introduce her, but Chow Yuan smiled and said, "No need to introduce him. Gao Buiyuan is your boyfriend, the son of Auntie Zhu Lingling and Uncle Gao Ran. He's a freshman at the Public Security University. He performed well and won a second-class Team Merit Award. He also helped his professor solve a shocking murder case. I heard that he's been recommended to graduate students." "Wow! You investigated him?" Little Bean exclaimed. "My sister did. Don't you know her? She loves to investigate the background of others the most. All these people have been turned upside down by her. I'm just borrowing her glory. Tuan is really something." Little Bean mumbled. "Hello." Gao Buiyuan smiled and greeted Chow Yuan. "So what now? Should I call him Brother Buiyuan or brother-in-law?" Chow Yuan pretended to be an adult and asked. "What brother-in-law? Did he pay you to change your name?" Little Bean glared at Chow Yuan. Gao Buiyuan quickly took out a red packet from his bag and stuffed it into Chow Yuan's hand. "Brother-in-law." Chow Yuan took the money and changed her words. Little Bean didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She glanced at the young man beside her and said, "Look at how smart you are. You always carry red packets around with you. Ha! You're good. You have a bright future. Thank you for your compliment, Dr. Qin." Gao Buiyuan smiled warmly. Every time he returned home to this familiar city and saw his beloved Little Bean, Gao Buiyuan would be filled with happiness. He still remembered when he left this city to go to school in Jing City as a freshman. Little Bean's eyes were swollen from crying. Gao Buiyuan's heart ached for her. When she arrived at school, her throat became inflamed. It took 3 days of infusion for her to recover. Later, he came home almost every week to help Little Bean recover. Gao Buiyuan was the representative of his generation who doted on his wife. Who wouldn't agree with him? After they got into the Maserati, Little Bean and Gao Buiyuan sat in the back seat and began to lovey-dovey. "I don't think I need to eat lunch. I'm so full from this PDA," Chow Yuan complained in the driver's seat. Chapter 48-52. While Chow Yuan was joking with them, 7 or 8 police officers blocked the road ahead as if they were investigating something. "What the? No way. Traffic police." Chow Yuan blurted out. "It's okay. We're not drunk drivers." Gao Buiyuan looked at Chow Yuan and knew she wasn't drunk. Little Bean interrupted, "But she's driving without a license. She's only 12 years old." Gao Buiyuan, sit tight. I'll step on the gas. Chow Yuan seemed to want to compete with the police officers. No. I'll take care of it." Gao Buiyuan didn't want his little cousin to take the risk. At this moment, the police officer waved his hand to stop the car. Chow Yuan hesitated for a moment before she obediently pulled over. After all, before she came back to China, her dad repeatedly warned her not to cause trouble for Huamin's aunt. "License," a police officer said in a routine tone as he waved his hand at Chow Yuan, who was sitting in the driver's seat. At this moment, the back seat window opened and Gao Buiyuan stuck his head out. "You don't have to call my dad, right?" Gao Ran had been a director for a long time, and his son had appeared in the bureau many times. Almost everyone knew who he was. Seeing that he was the son of a big shot, they immediately let him in. No. Take care." Gao Buiyuan nodded and smiled as he closed the window. Little Bean looked at Gao Buiyuan with admiration and kissed him on the cheek. "Damn. Can you guys control yourselves? There's a living person in front of us. Xiao Yuan almost closed her eyes. We can't control ourselves. If you're not used to it, you can get out of the car and cool off. Xiao Yuan, Gao Buiyuan's return made the atmosphere livelier. In Huamin's South Hill Manor, there were banquets held in the front greenhouse for several days. Of course, they only hosted their family and friends. To everyone's surprise, when Little Bean, Gao Buiyuan, and Xiao Yuan came back, Tang Tianzhao's face was bruised and his arm was dislocated. How did you do that? Gao Buiyuan laughed. Obviously, he was gloating. Qin Guoguo leaned against the door frame with a cold expression. She fought with Tuan Tuan. Ha 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 ha. Little Bean let out a tragic laugh. Xiao Yuan, on the other hand, was calm as if she had expected this. She even patted Tang Tianzhao's shoulder and comforted him. You're really lucky. My sister didn't even hit you hard. The last time you competed with my sister, there was a kid your age from our military academy who was beaten up by my sister until all his bones were broken. He was bedridden for 3 months. Hearing Xiao Yuan's words, Tang Tianzhao shuddered. How scary was this? Originally, he was full of confidence. After all, he was a taekwondo master and had learned professional Muay Thai from his father. That's right. Last year, Tang Chuan brought his wife and children to Thailand for business and stayed there for more than a month. In order to train his son's physical fitness, Tang Chuan invited a famous Muay Thai master to teach him personally. Logically speaking, even though this kid was only 12 years old, he was very agile. It wouldn't be a problem for him to deal with 5 or 6 adults. But even so, Tang Tianzhao was still completely oppressed by Qiao Tuanchuan, who was of the same age. But I heard Brother Yao won yesterday. I thought I could do it too. Tang Tianzhao looked aggrieved. He had never seen Qin Guoguo's skills, so he underestimated Qiao Tuanchuan's ability. I won by a narrow margin yesterday. You were completely crushed today, Qin Guoguo said calmly. Why do I feel like you guys set this up to trick me? The more Tang Tianzhao thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. You're making excuses after losing. Useless. Little Bean laughed and scolded, trying to hide her intention to trick Tang Tianzhao. Everyone's smiles were also very profound and mysterious. By the way, Brother Buiyuan, have you contacted Yun Chu? Is he not coming back? Qin Guoguo thought of something and asked Buiyuan. Chapter 48-53. When Qin Guoguo asked this question, everyone's gaze focused on Gao Buiyuan. He actually wanted to give everyone a surprise, but I asked him the other day. He said that he still has a project to do, so he won't be coming back. After Gao Buiyuan said that, he felt a little awkward and lowered his head. Forget it. If he doesn't come back, so be it. Our pudding doesn't care. Although Little Bean always bickered with her sister, she was still unhappy to hear that her sister was wronged. Therefore, she naturally spoke up for her sister. GK headquarters. After Pudding finished her work, she remembered that someone else had arrived today. Just as she was thinking, her chauffeur called. President Qin, I've sent him to the company. Do you want me to go straight to your office? Yes, bring him here. Okay, I'll be upstairs in 5 minutes. After hanging up the phone, Pudding was still a little nervous. She stood up and took a few deep breaths. All these years, as long as it was someone related to him, she would carefully interact with them. Although they had already forgotten and couldn't remember, but she had all the memories. 5 minutes later, the office door opened. Pudding looked at the familiar figure and almost cried. Uncle An, Pudding said. Pudding, I'm not late, am I? An smiled honestly. After Master Wu erased everyone's memories, and also lost all his memories. He no longer had any obsession with Suyu, so he naturally wouldn't stay in Suyu's private mansion anymore. At first, Pudding introduced him to her father to be the company's security manager. Later on, An couldn't get used to the life in the big city, so he returned to his hometown. An's hometown was in a remote mountain area. When he returned to the area, he used his savings to build a 2-story house. He even married a girl from a neighboring village and had a son and a daughter. He contracted a fish pond in his hometown and raised some rare fish. His income had been quite good these few years. And didn't even remember how he met Pudding. He vaguely remembered that he used to work for a big boss. He had protected the big boss for many years. Later on, the big boss moved away or something else happened. His memory of that was blurry. However, the money in his bank card was real. He also vaguely remembered that he had known Pudding and her family for many years. After An returned to the mountains, he rarely came to Sea City. This time, it was Pudding who called him in advance and invited him to the coming-of-age ceremony. He was really flattered. Why didn't Auntie come? Pudding asked with a smile. She still has to take care of the 2 kids at home. Uncle Shaoan, I'll bring you home later. You can stay at my house for the next few years. Don't feel uncomfortable. Everyone misses you. Yes. Shaoan nodded. Although he came back mainly to attend Pudding and Little Bean's coming-of-age ceremony, and had a vague feeling that there was someone more important. But he just couldn't remember. That feeling was very strange. Uncle An, how much do you remember about the past? To be honest, maybe it's because my head was injured when I was in the army, so my memory has been deteriorating for the past few years. I don't really remember much about the past. It's very vague. Do you still remember Lou? Pudding stopped halfway through her sentence. Forget it. When you see her, you'll probably remember her. Pudding smiled. Because of the loss of his memory, and couldn't even remember Lu Yen. How would he react when he saw her again? Pudding knew it was inappropriate for her to gather so many people, but in fact, she just wanted to use this method to miss Suyu, the man who was very, very important to her life. Chapter 48-54. Inside a small pavilion on top of South Hill Manor, Rick and Chin Chu sat side by side, overlooking the scenery of the city. The 2 men's hearts calmed down. You didn't expect me to live such an ordinary life, right? Rick asked Chin Chu. Yeah, I thought you'd become the next godfather of the underworld. That's not important to me. If it weren't for my brother, I wouldn't have. I might still be here, running the seductive Fox bar that belongs to me. To me, being a bar owner is enough. Life's trajectory isn't something we can control. Many times, no matter how hard you try, things won't go the way you want. We call it fate, Chin Chu said. What? You're old now, so you're playing chicken soup for the soul? Rick teased him. Chin Chu smiled faintly. He was still as handsome as ever. Chu, yeah. You and Huamin had a wedding. Chin Chu's eyes flashed, and he fell slightly silent. You love her so much, you don't seem like someone who doesn't care about giving her a title. Although a wedding is just a formality, it's also a symbol of a lifetime commitment. You 2 have 3 children now, and they're all grown up. You're both over 40 years old, are you really not going to have a wedding? That's not what I want, it's what Mian wants. Then why did Huamin do it? She knows how much you love her, and how much you want to announce your happiness to the world. Rick didn't understand. He didn't know why Huamin was doing this. Because they had all lost their memories of Suyu, Rick couldn't remember why Huamin was so persistent. She didn't say, and I didn't ask. I don't want to make things difficult for her. You know, I've never had the heart to make things difficult for her, Chin Chu said slowly. Do you want me to ask for you? No, it's fine like this. Besides the wedding, we already have everything. As you said, our children are all grown up. The whole world knows that Huamin is Chin Chu's wife, so it really doesn't matter. Really? If it's true, you wouldn't be so disappointed. As Chin Chu's best friend, Rick had always known the only regret in Chin Chu's heart. After their wedding had been ruined by Hua Xiqian, Chin Chu had always wanted to prepare for a grand wedding. He wanted to give his wife a beautiful memory, even the most beautiful memory of her life. However, Huamin no longer mentioned the wedding. Chin Chu occasionally mentioned it, but Huamin subconsciously avoided the topic. Chin Chu couldn't bring it up again. In the blink of an eye, the twins were already 18 years old. Huamin and Chin Chu were both middle-aged. Rick thought that they shouldn't be like this. South Hill Manor. After arriving at the hospital, Huamin had a simple meeting, dealt with some work, and came home early. Gao Ran and his family had arrived early. Zhu Lingling helped Huamin wash the fruits for lunch. She didn't forget to complain, Mian, I'm telling you, Ha. My heartless son came straight to your house after leaving the airport. I know. Little Bean and Yuan Yuan went to pick up Bui Yuan. Huamin was calm. So is our Bui Yuan a typical example of forgetting his mother after marrying a wife? No. He hasn't even married yet, and he's already forgotten his mother. How sad. It's okay. He'll be filial to his father-in-law and mother-in-law in the future. Get out of my way. My son was taken away by your family for no reason. Zhu Lingling pinched Huamin's neck. She was as energetic as when she was young. Where's Xiaowei? Why are you so late today? Huamin glanced around but didn't see Jiang Xiaowei. Chapter 48-55. Zhu Lingling suddenly remembered. Oh, by the way, she just called me and said that she and her husband had something to do and would come over later. Oh, okay. I'll save a portion for her. All these years, Huamin's friendship with Zhu Lingling and Jiang Xiaowei remained unchanged. The three of them had never had any unhappiness, even though Pudding and Wei Yunchu had blocked each other. Huamin and Jiang Xiaowei were still as close as ever. Whenever she had something delicious or good, she would think of them. Huamin carefully peeled the fruits and placed them on a fruit plate. He even saved a portion for Jiang Xiaowei and put it in the fridge, wrapped in plastic wrap. When Pudding drove in with an, he saw Tang Tianjiao sticking to Qiao Tuanchuan like a dog skin plaster. He wanted to follow Qiao Tuanchuan wherever he went. I said, are you a dog skin plaster? Don't follow me. If you agree to take me as your disciple, I won't follow you. It turned out that Tang Tianjiao had been beaten up and was shamelessly pestering Qiao Tuanchuan to be his disciple. Qiao Tuanchuan was so annoyed that he was going crazy. If I don't take in disciples, I'm afraid I won't teach my skills to others. Then I'll follow you. Tang Tianjiao was so shameless that no one could mess with him. If you follow me, I'll beat you up. Qiao Tuanchuan waved his fists as if he was going to use force. If you beat me up, I'll tell my aunt. Tang Tianjiao said confidently. Qiao Tuanchuan, who was Tang Tianjiao's aunt? Of course, it was Huamin. Huamin was Qiao Tuanchuan's beloved aunt. Therefore, he didn't want his aunt to show up. Qiao Tuanchuan felt that he had been tricked by Little Bean. The moment he arrived, he provoked a dog skin plaster. And sat in Pudding's car. When they came in, the car was very slow. And vaguely saw a familiar face. He saw Qiao Tuanchuan, who was arguing with Tang Tianjiao at the door. Qiao Tuanchuan looked a bit like Lu Yen, but he also looked like Qiao Fei. That little girl looks familiar. And mumbled. Pudding just drove calmly and didn't answer. After parking the car, and got out of the car. At this time, Chin Chu and Rick also came back from the top of the mountain. Dad, look who's here. Pudding smiled at Chin Chu. President Chin, long time no see. Shaoan respected Chin Chu very much, so when he saw Chin Chu, he greeted him very politely. Xiao and Chin Chu was also very close. He walked over and chatted with Shaoan for a while, asking him about his situation in his hometown in the past few years. Shaoan returned to the fields. Among these people, he lived a relatively poor life, but he was the most relaxed. They were the most ordinary and ordinary people. Where's Auntie? Pudding asked Xiao Yuanyuan. My mom is taking an afternoon nap at the swimming pool in the back garden, Xiao Yuanyuan said. Swimming pool. Afternoon nap. Auntie sure has a personality. Pudding smiled and led an all the way in. And also greeted everyone. Looking at the familiar faces, many of Xiao An's blurry memories came back. Especially when he saw the two elders of the Su family, he had an inexplicable feeling in his heart. He shouldn't be familiar with them, but why was he so touched? Until he saw Lu Yan in the back garden. Lu Yan was only wearing a white V-neck long-sleeved shirt and a pair of tight dark blue jeans. She looked like a young girl. She was holding a book in her hand. It was a book about Zhou Yi. The book covered her face. She was probably taking a nap. Auntie, Pudding called out. Lu Yan sat up lazily, removed the book from her face, and yawned. And looked at the familiar face and his body trembled. Lu Yan, he blurted out. All his memories of Lu Yan were instantly awakened. Pudding looked at him sideways and saw that he was very excited.
Chapter 48-56. Hearing En's voice, Lu Yan turned her head and looked over. Then, her memory opened. Except for the part where she couldn't remember Su Yu, Lu Yan recalled all the memories about En. She was his goddess, an unattainable woman. He didn't even dare to think about it. En's calm eyes finally collapsed when he saw Lu Yan. Instead, it was replaced by the ecstasy and passion of a young man meeting his sweetheart for the first time. Hey, you're here too. Long time no see. How are you? Lu Yan stood up swiftly from the bench and tossed the book onto the bench with a smile on her face. And nodded excitedly. Good, good, good. I'm good. How about you, goddess? Me? I'm still the same. Then, they smiled at each other and Pudding found an excuse to leave. She wanted to give Uncle En a chance to talk to Auntie Lu Yan alone. Although Xiao Fei was jealous, he wouldn't be jealous of En. After all, he knew that their statuses and thoughts were very different. In the back garden, Lu Yan naughtily climbed onto a high railing despite her age. Sitting on it, she swung her feet and crossed her legs. And stood below, still looking up at Lu Yan. He had never felt so peaceful before. It was as if it was only yesterday that he had accompanied Lu Yan to eat and stir up trouble in this city. Time is really a butcher's knife. Lu Yan glanced at En and saw that his sideburns had turned white. She sighed that time was unforgiving. Such poetic words didn't sound like something the crazy Lu Yan would say. Sure enough, she continued, but, whether time is a butcher's knife depends on whether you're a pig or not. And, do you think I've changed? All these years? Lu Yan asked, and you're still the same as before. After a pause, and said another word, beautiful. She was still as beautiful as before. It wasn't a compliment, it was what En thought. Lu Yan's beauty was unparalleled in the world. Even Xiao Tuanchuan and Xiao Yuanyuan were stunning at such a young age. Lu Yan smiled in satisfaction and nodded. Yeah, I like that. I was just thinking that if you said I was old and ugly, I would beat you into a pig's head. And smiled foolishly. Have you been training all these years? How's your martial arts? Do you want to spar with me? No, no, no. I'll just admit defeat. Goddess, please don't torture me. Shaoan was very sensible. Hearing that Lu Yan was going to fight, he surrendered immediately. He was not as arrogant as the young master of the Tang family. He had known Lu Yan's strength for a long time. Although many years had passed, he still did not dare to underestimate Lu Yan. So, before Lu Yan could play a prank on him, he refused. Shaoan, there's something I don't understand. Since I ran into you today, I'd like to ask you. Please speak, goddess. Through the sunlight, and looked at Lu Yan, who was high up in the air, and felt satisfied that he could see her again in this lifetime.
Who was your employer back then? I vaguely remember that you used to be a bodyguard for an employer. But after all these years, I can't remember his name or what he looked like. I think I know him, but I just can't remember anything. Whenever I try to remember, my mind goes blank. This feeling is so fucking strange. Lu Yan's brain was actually very sensitive. After seeing him this time, she immediately thought of many unexplainable things, so she asked him directly. And was also stunned. Chapter 48-57. Because Lu Yan's feelings were so similar to his. He had been living and working in his hometown all these years and still had so much money in his card, but what did he do in this city? Who he was a bodyguard for, his relationship with his employer, and all his memories were gone. It was like a roll of film tape. There was a beginning and an end, and everyone knew what the ending was, but the process in the middle was suddenly blurred. That feeling was getting weirder and weirder, goddess, to be honest. I feel the same as you. I can't remember either. How can that be? Lu Yan was shocked. That's your employer. You've been by that person's side for so many years. So many years, you can't forget everything. Think carefully, is that person a man or a woman, round or flat? Lu Yan's curiosity was completely aroused, so she wanted to get to the bottom of it, hoping to get something from him. However, An really couldn't remember. He told Lu Yan everything in his heart. Only then did Lu Yan realize that she and An had a common memory that had been magically erased. If she hadn't seen An, Lu Yan wouldn't have cared about this. Because in her heart, her father, Qiao Fei, her 2 daughters, and Huamin's family were the most important people. Now that she saw An, Lu Yan's curiosity grew. She really wanted to know what the memory she had forgotten was. Who was the person she had forgotten? After putting Sen to meet her auntie, she went to see the children. These super-rich second-generation heirs were especially close to each other. Little Bean, Bui Yuan, Qin Guogua, young Master Tang, Qiao Tuanchuan, Qiao Yuanyuan, and Rick's son, Jean, were all there. Except for Zhixin's youngest daughter, Wei Ying's youngest daughter, and Ni Yang's children who hadn't gone abroad, everyone else was there. It's been a long time since I've seen so many people. Gao Buiyuan smiled and sighed. If only Yunchu was here. Young Master Tang didn't know how to read people's expressions and touched a sore spot. As soon as he said that, everyone looked at Pudding, afraid that she would be unhappy. But who was Pudding? That was very much like his parents' personalities, and it was not for show. Those who didn't know her well would never be able to see any emotions on her face. Only Little Bean knew that she still cared. Pudding didn't seem to hear Tang Tianjiao's words. She looked around and said, since there are so many people here, why don't we play a killing game? Please close your eyes when it's dark. I like that. Xiao Tuanchuan also liked to play brain-burning games. Everyone agreed to Pudding's suggestion. They all seemed to be very interested. Just like that, South Hill Manor had another particularly lively day. The children were playing games, and the adults were chatting about their daily lives. Huamin hadn't had such peaceful days in years. Sometimes, she wondered if time had passed so quickly that she had forgotten something important. At this moment, in another spacetime of a parallel world, Imperial Star Entertainment headquarters, Su Yu's face was dark as he listened to the summary of the various departments after the failed bid. Everyone knew that the president was in a bad mood, so they didn't dare to speak loudly. Everyone was trembling in fear. At this moment, an ear-piercing ringtone broke the silence. Su Yu's cell phone rang loudly on the table. He looked down at the caller ID and his eyes immediately became gentle. In the next second, Su Yu picked up the phone and said in an extremely gentle voice, "Momo, what's wrong?" "Daddy. I want to eat cake." The volume from Su Yu's phone wasn't low, so everyone in the quiet conference room heard it clearly. The whole world knew that the two women Su Yu cared about the most were his wife, Huamin, and his daughter, Su Yimo. Chapter 48-58. Then, Daddy will go back and buy it for you later, okay? Su Yu held the phone and didn't dare to speak too loudly, afraid that he would scare his daughter. "No, Daddy will come back now, not later." "Okay, I'll come back now." "Don't eat matcha, it's hard to communicate." Su Yimo's pronunciation wasn't very accurate and her voice was cute. Su Yu felt that his heart was about to melt when he heard his daughter's voice through the phone. Okay. I won't eat matcha. See you later, Daddy." "See you later, Momo." After hanging up the phone, Su Yu's expression wasn't as gloomy as before. He stood up and looked around at the higher-ups. "That's all for today. Meeting adjourned." Then, Su Yu turned around and left. All the higher-ups also stood up and left the venue. This wasn't the first time and everyone was used to it. No matter how important President Su's matter was, it wasn't as important as his wife and child. Huamin and Su Yimo's matter was the most important matter. Su Yu left the company and drove his Lamborghini Sixth Element to the most luxurious cake shop in the city. Other than matcha, he bought a set of all the other flavors for his daughter. Then, he drove back to his private villa at lightning speed. This villa was exactly the same as the one he had in another time and space. Su Yu was a very nostalgic person. He would always inadvertently think of another time and space, as if it was something that happened in his previous life. When he reached home, Huamin was surprised to see Su Yu. "Why are you back? What time is it?" Huamin looked at his watch. It was 9:30 in the morning. Su Yu had breakfast at 7:30 and left home. It had only been 2 hours and he was back. What was going on? Momo said that she wanted to eat cake, Su Yu said seriously. Huamin was even more confused, but Momo just fell asleep. She just acted before she fell asleep. How can you take a child's words seriously? Huamin felt that Su Yu was spoiling his daughter too much. They wished they could go up to the 9th heaven to catch the moon and go down to the 5 seas to catch turtles. But I can't break my promise to my daughter. I've already promised her. As he spoke, Su Yu began to toss the cakes he had bought onto the dining table one by one. When Momo wakes up, give it to her. You'll get cavities if you eat too much sweet food. As a doctor, Huamin really didn't want Su Yu to be so ignorant. What's wrong with tooth decay? I'll take her to America and get a new set of top-notch teeth. What kind of father are you? You're so childish. Huamin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Is Daddy back? Su Yimo was originally asleep, but after hearing Su Yu's voice, she miraculously woke up. He even ran out barefoot. When Su Yu saw this little thing, he was immediately overjoyed. He hurriedly strode over and picked up his daughter from the ground. Did Daddy ever tell you not to walk barefoot on the ground?
Yes, I did. Do you know why? It's cold on the ground. Her slurred pronunciation made Su Yu and Huamin want to laugh. You know it's cold on the ground, but you still did it. Did you do it on purpose? Su Yu was so bad that he copied his daughter's slurred speech. Luckily, Su Yimo was still young and didn't know the situation. Otherwise, she wouldn't have let her father off so easily. Momo misses Daddy. Seeing that she was being scolded, Su Yimo immediately used her ultimate move and rubbed her head against Su Yu's face. For a moment, Su Yu didn't know what was going on. He wasn't afraid of anything, but he was afraid that his daughter would use her ultimate move. Su Yu was really at her mercy. Daddy, where's my cake? The little girl was still thinking about eating.
Chapter 48-59. Su Yu carried Su Yimo to the dining table and looked at the dozens of cakes on it. Fortunately, Su Yu's table was big enough to fit all of them. Wow! Daddy, you're amazing. I'll reward you with a little flower. Su Yimo took off a little red flower on her head and put it on Su Yu's head. That scene. Huamin almost spat it out. Su Yu didn't care. As long as his daughter was happy, his image didn't matter. Huamin even naughtily took out his phone and recorded a 10-second video for his parents. Then, he posted it on his WeChat moments. Mr. Su skipped work for 2 hours and went home, saying that he was eating cake with his daughter. I can't live like this. I think my family is going bankrupt. Zhu Lingling's cheeky reply, if your family is bankrupt, you can come to my house. I'll give you whatever my golden retriever eats. Huamin directly replied with a hammer, wanting to hammer Zhu Lingling to death. Jiang Xiaowei, on the other hand, was more tactful. She commented, a family flaunting their love. How shameful. Huamin actually didn't want Su Yu to spoil Su Yimo too much, but that was obviously impossible. Because after Huamin gave birth to Su Yimo, she stayed in the confinement center for 28 days. Su Yu stayed there for 28 days. Most of the time, he didn't even need a nurse. Changing diapers, feeding milk, and even bathing and swimming for the child were all done by him. Although he was clumsy and didn't know how to do it, he learned very seriously with the professional nurse next to him. At that time, Wei Liao and Tang Chuan lamented that it was over. Lord Su's reputation was ruined. From then on, the king had become a super dad. Su Yu and Huamin eventually named their child Su Yimo. The meaning was, to help each other in times of need. She hoped that Huamin and Su Yu would be able to walk on together no matter how rich or poor they were. Reality proved that when she was with Su Yu, there were no storms at all. After all, Su Yu was a henpecked husband. As long as his wife said one, he would not dare to say two. If his wife asked him to go east, he would not dare to go west. Furthermore, he was proud of being afraid of his wife, which made Tang Chuan and Wei Liao despise him for a long time. After knowing that Wei Liao had married Jiang Xiaowei, he had also become a henpecked family member. Tang Chuan felt that the world had gone completely crazy. In the end, Su Yu accompanied his daughter to eat the cake and had lunch at home before reluctantly returning to the company. Although Huamin was still the deputy director of Southside, he spent most of his time at home taking care of his daughter. After all, she was not at ease with the nanny at home taking care of the children. Therefore, the couple placed all their focus on the little princess, causing Su Yimo to act even more coquettishly. In a parallel world, in another space-time continuum. Some people didn't know that Suyu was so happy now and were still thinking about the past. While others were happily playing the killing game, Little Bean quietly pulled her sister to a corner. "Sis, what do you want?" Little Bean's face was cold. "I didn't do anything." "Nothing. Why would you ask Uncle An to come back? You know he's Sue." Little Bean didn't finish her sentence. The name Suyu was like a curse that she hadn't said for a long time. "I'm just nostalgic," Little Bean said indifferently. "You're not reminiscing about the past. You're trying to remind everyone of him, aren't you?" "Sis, you're crazy. 5 years ago, you forced Wei Yunchu to leave because of this, and now you're trying to do the same thing again. Do you want mommy to remember everything and feel guilty for the rest of her life? Just because you can't forget, you want everyone to remember. Sis, you're too selfish." Chapter 4860. In the face of Little Bean's questioning and accusation, Pudding didn't retort and remained silent. Fifth Grandpa said that Handsome Sue asked him to do it. It was Handsome Sue's last wish. He did so much for everyone. He didn't want anyone to suffer. How could you go against his last wish? Look at what you've done. You're so close to Auntie Yao. You avoided Wei Yunchu 5 years ago. You made him think that there was someone in your heart that you couldn't get rid of, but you didn't explain it to him. You made him so heartbroken that he left the country. Now, you brought Uncle An back. You want everything about Handsome Sue back, right? Let me ask you, can you bring him back?" Little Bean was rarely so fierce, but she felt that if she didn't say something, her sister would go crazy. "I can't." Pudding answered coldly to the question about Suyu's resurrection. "If you can't, why are you still doing this? The biggest event of this coming-of-age ceremony is our secret wedding for Mom and Dad. But you want everyone to remember Handsome Sue. Sis, you're crazy. I think you're possessed. Handsome Sue has been gone for so many years, but you've gone crazy for so many years." Little Bean wasn't wrong. Everyone had lost their memories except for the twins' memories of Suyu. In the beginning, the twins couldn't get used to it and often cried in the dead of night, missing Suyu. As time passed and she grew up with them, she began to understand Suyu's original intention. After so many years, Little Bean had seen through everything, but Pudding was stuck in a quagmire. Many people thought that Wei Yunchu left the country 5 years ago because Tian Tian tried to drive a wedge between them. She wanted to make Wei Yunchu and her misunderstand and blacklist each other. But only Pudding, Wei Yunchu, and Little Bean knew the truth. 5 years ago, before Wei Yunchu left the country, he confessed to Pudding. But Wei Yunchu knew who he wanted to be with for the rest of his life, so he invited Pudding to go abroad with him. He wanted to marry her after graduating from college, but Pudding refused. Wei Yunchu wasn't angry even though she refused. He just thought that Pudding was too young and wanted to wait. But what he didn't expect was that Pudding kept saying that there was someone she couldn't forget in her heart. This caused Wei Yunchu to break down. All these years, although he didn't know the truth, he could vaguely feel that Pudding was sometimes absent-minded and sometimes depressed. It must be because he had something on his mind, but he didn't expect that there was someone hidden in his heart. Little Bean also knew about this. The sisters naturally wouldn't tell him who this person was. Wei Yunchu thought that it was a boy that Pudding had a crush on in school. After suffering a serious blow, he went abroad. For the first and second years, he was just angry and didn't want to come back. After a long time, the two of them really drifted apart. They had not contacted each other for 5 years. They had even blacklisted each other and were unwilling to listen to each other's gossip. On the surface, everyone thought that Wei Yunchu had abandoned Pudding and left the country. In reality, it was Pudding who rejected Wei Yunchu, forcing him to leave the country in despair. The whole thing had nothing to do with Tian Tian. She just happened to go abroad with Wei Yunchu and was associated with some things. After Wei Yunchu left, Pudding regretted it. She even envied Tian Tian for being able to stay by Wei Yunchu's side. What she didn't know was that Tian Tian didn't receive any warmth from Wei Yunchu. Wei Yunchu was an extremely cold person. Although he wasn't as cold as Qin Chu, he was extremely difficult to get close to. All these years, only Pudding could truly enter his heart, but in the end. Chapter 48-61. Little Bean, I think I've really gone crazy. Because I don't even know if I miss Handsome Sue, if I'm obsessed with him, if it's the admiration between a man and a woman, or if it's the reliance I have on him since I was young. After saying this, Pudding's tears fell. Pudding's EQ was much higher than Little Bean's, even higher than that of ordinary people. However, the onlooker sees more clearly than the player. Now that she was deeply involved, she had completely lost her direction. The problem that had been bothering her for years was that regardless of whether Suyu was around or not, she didn't know what kind of feeling she had for Suyu. Back then, Wei Yunchu confessed that he wanted to go abroad with her. It wasn't that she hadn't thought about it, but she just felt that if she just went abroad and ignored everything, then Suyu's last memory in this world would be gone. Other than her and Little Bean, no one else would remember Suyu. Dwelling on this matter made her lose sleep and suffer. There was even a period of time when she frequently dreamed of Suyu. She dreamed of how Suyu doted on her and Little Bean when they were young. In the end, Suyu promised to take them to Tokyo Disneyland. That wish didn't come true. What Pudding couldn't stand the most was that the woman Suyu loved the most in his life, his mother, Min, actually forgot about Suyu. Many times, when she was about to say something, she wanted to remind her mother. She wanted to remind her that there was a man in this world who had disappeared in order to fulfill her happiness. However, she knew that once some words were said, they couldn't be taken back. If her mother remembered everything, then her mother would continue to be in pain, and there would be an irreparable wound between her and her father. Therefore, Pudding, who was conflicted and in pain, lost Wei Yunchu from 5 years ago. Now that she was about to turn 18, everything she did was to awaken everyone's memories of Suyu. Others might not understand, but Little Bean understood. She felt that her sister's actions were extremely selfish. That was why he scolded her, hoping that she would wake up. So what if it's true love? Pudding, Handsome Sue is gone. He left us. It's been so many years. Please let go of Handsome Sue and yourself. You've already made Wei Yunchu too scared to go home for 5 years. Do you still want everyone to spend the rest of their lives crying for Handsome Sue? Little Bean's words were like a hammer that slammed into his chest. Pudding listened, but she didn't want to let go. Little Bean, if we both forget Handsome Sue, he will disappear from this world forever. I haven't forgotten. He has always lived in my heart. But I'm not like you. I'm not possessed. You want to use your memories to kill yourself and the people around you. Pudding remained silent. I'm warning you for the last time, Qin Zhao Zhao. If you make mom and dad suffer because of your selfishness, you're not my sister. I'll hate you for the rest of my life and never forgive you. I think if you make mom suffer, Handsome Sue won't forgive you in the other world either. After saying this, Little Bean turned around angrily. She didn't want to persuade Pudding anymore. She couldn't understand what Pudding was doing. If Pudding really wanted to revive everyone's memories of Handsome Sue, then she really wouldn't forgive her. After Little Bean left, Pudding turned around and wiped her tears. Just then, her phone rang. Boss, I'm at the entrance of South Hill Manor. Can I come in for a cup of tea? Liao Mukin said in a teasing tone. Chapter 4862. Liao Mukin came without any warning. There was no signal at all. He swaggered to the front gate of South Hill Manor and sat in a black van. Since he was already at the door, Pudding had no reason not to pick him up. At the front entrance, Mississippi, the security guards greeted Pudding respectfully. She nodded slightly with a cold face and walked directly to the black van. When Pudding arrived, the door opened automatically. Before Pudding could speak, Liao Mukin said, "It's my own idea. My agent and assistant don't know. I sent them away. What do you want?" Pudding looked at him with a trace of annoyance. She had just quarreled with Little Bean because of Su Yu. It could be said that ever since they were young, Little Bean had always quarreled with Pudding, but she had never scolded Pudding as seriously as she did just now. This was the first time in 18 years. Pudding's heart was really fragile. It seemed that Little Bean was also annoyed by her. Pudding had just caused a storm between sisters because of Su Yu, and this guy came to her door. If there was anything good about Liao Mukin, it would be Pudding. From Pudding's point of view, the only thing left was this face that was similar to Su Yu's. "Boss, I really just want to join in the fun. I haven't eaten yet. Can I have dinner? I heard that your dinner is always very fancy." The guy had a playful look on his face. He looked like a little ruffian. Pudding sometimes didn't understand why he had so many female fans. How could he compare to Su Yu? He couldn't even compare to one of his fingers. He didn't have handsome Su's dominance and arrogance, nor did he have handsome Su's elegance and affection. However, since he was already at the door, there was no reason to reject him. In the end, Pudding acquiesced and let him in. The dinner party at South Hill Manor had more than 100 people, including family members, guests, and servants in the manor. So, it shouldn't be a big deal to have Liao Mukin, right? Pudding thought. However, she soon realized that she was wrong. This guy attracted everyone's attention as soon as he entered the door. "Io, isn't that the little fresh meat that's been very popular recently? Why is he here?" Gao Buiyuan's sharp eyes immediately spotted the man beside Pudding. Liao Mukin might have come prepared today. It was not as simple as a freeloader. Therefore, he was not wearing his usual casual jeans. Instead, he was wearing a black suit with cropped trousers. It was very fashionable. There was also a small wine-red bow tie on his collar. It was cute and playful, which matched his age very well. After seeing Liao Mukin, Little Bean's expression changed. In the end, she didn't say a word. Instead, she pretended to lower her head and not look at him. On the other hand, Xiao Tuanchuan crossed her arms and said word by word, "Liao Mukin, the most popular artist under GK Entertainment. I heard that his salary has exceeded 200 million yuan, and he's the youngest and most valuable male artist in the country. He's also GK Entertainment's cash cow and Pudding's new favorite." Xiao Tuanchuan smiled. "I don't know if he's a new favorite or not, but I'm guessing that Pudding doesn't treat him well." Seeing how Pudding purposely kept her distance from him, it was obvious that Pudding didn't like this guy very much. Holy shit. Liao Mukin. He's so fucking handsome. No, I have to take a picture with him and post it on my WeChat moments. Tang Tianjiao rushed over. Other than posting it on his WeChat moments, there was nothing else in his mind. Chapter 4863. Young Master Tang did as he said and stood in front of Liao Mukin. "Liao Mukin, I'm your fan. Can I take a picture with you?" Before Liao Mukin could say yes, the kid put his arm around Liao Mukin's shoulder. Then, he took out his phone with one hand and forced himself to take a picture. Pudding shook her head helplessly. She didn't even look at them. Fuck. You're pretty good looking. Tang Tianjiao pointed at Liao Mukin and said. Thank you. Before Liao Mukin could finish thanking him, the kid interrupted him. That guy continued, I think we're on par, although you're a little less charming than me. Liao Mukin awkwardly took back the second half of his sentence and scratched his head. Do you mind if I post it on WeChat later? Tang Tianjiao asked as he edited the picture with his head lowered. I don't mind, but can you beautify my face? His words amused young Master Tang. Of course. Don't worry, bro. Tang Tianjiao waved his hand and ran away, afraid that Pudding would scold him. Then, the kid posted a very arrogant WeChat moment. It said, ran into Liao Mukin. He's good looking, but he's not as charismatic as me. Ha ha ha. It was really young Master Tang's style to add 3 ha 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 after a cool sentence. This little joker was indeed the son of Tang Chuan and Qin Ning. He was always full of energy and couldn't stop. Tian Tian also had Tang Tianjiao's WeChat. She saw his post on WeChat. She immediately took a screenshot and sent it to Wei Yunchu. She thought Wei Yunchu was far away in the States. Yunchu, I saw Liao Mukin go to South Hill Manor today. So? This time, Wei Yunchu replied within seconds. Tian Tian was overjoyed and continued to add fuel to the fire. I've heard that he and Pudding have an ambiguous relationship. Now that she's bringing him home, he must be meeting her parents. Yunchu, you should let go of the past. Some people aren't worth waiting for, really. Wei Yunchu ignored her. Tiantian's words weren't trustworthy. Wei Yunchu already knew this. Wei Yunchu also had Tang Tianjiao's WeChat, so he saw the photo he posted. The rumors about Pudding and the male artist under her company had been spreading like wildfire for half a year. Most importantly, Pudding had indeed given him a lot of resources. Wei Yunchu looked at Liao Mukin's photo and had to admit that he was quite good-looking. But did Pudding really like such a shallow guy? After not seeing her for 5 years, had she really forgotten everything from the past? Inexplicably, Wei Yunchu's heart felt stifled, and his hand that was drinking coffee stopped in midair. Son, does this dress look good? Jiang Xiaowei came out of the fitting room and looked at her son gently. Not bad. How does it compare to the one just now? Anything is fine. Then which one should I wear tonight? This one, the color is brighter. Auntie Huamin will like it, Wei Yunchu said gently. Jiang Xiaowei nodded and smiled at the shop assistant beside her. Since my son said they are all good, then pack them up. Iron this one, I'll wear it later. Okay, Mrs. Wei. After shopping with her son, Jiang Xiaowei looked at her watch. It's about time. I have to go. Do you want to come with me? Jiang Xiaowei asked tentatively. I'm not going today. I have an appointment with a friend. The driver can drive you there. I'll stay home tonight, don't worry. Okay, don't be too late. Jiang Xiaowei had always respected her son, so she didn't say more when she saw that he didn't want to go with her. At South Hill Manor, huh? Who's that pretty boy next to Pudding? Zhu Lingling didn't see him clearly at first glance. Hearing her words, Huamin also looked through the crowd, and when she saw the face clearly, she found it strangely familiar. Chapter 48-64. Zhu Lingling didn't realize who it was until she saw him clearly. Oh, I remember now. He's the little boy who's very popular recently. He's good-looking, Lingling, who's he? Huamin didn't pay attention to celebrities and gossip, so he didn't know who was popular recently. No way. Are you so backward now? He's an artist under your company. An artist under my company? Huamin was even more confused. He works for Pudding and is very popular. I heard that he has tens of millions of fans. What's his name again? It was right on the tip of my tongue, but I forgot. Zhu Lingling was also confused and didn't understand. Huamin felt very strange. He put down his work and walked over step by step. He couldn't help but want to get closer to the little boy. Mom. Behind him, he heard Little Bean's voice. Huamin turned around abruptly. What's wrong? Little Bean. Mom, I miss Grandpa. When is Grandpa coming? I haven't gotten through to your auntie, so I'm not sure yet. Huamin couldn't do anything about her father. He was very secretive and was even harder to find than Lu Yen. So, she wasn't sure if her father would come to the twins' coming-of-age ceremony. Okay. Really? When Grandpa comes, I'll teach him a lesson. Humph. By the way, Mom, didn't you say there's pine nut custard tonight? Why didn't I see it? Come with me. I want to get more for Tuan Tuan and Yuan Yuan. It's on the table next to your Auntie Lingling. Huamin pointed at Zhu Lingling. Mom, come here. I have something to tell you about the hospital. Little Bean pulled on Huamian's arm as she spoke. Just like that, she easily got her mother to move to the side. Pudding took Liao Mukin out of Huamin's sight. Little Bean didn't know if her sister was crazy or not, but she brought Liao Mukin here without a word. She had seen her mother's blank expression when she looked at Liao Mukin just now. She would never remind her mother of Su Yu. Absolutely not. Pudding also saw Little Bean stop Huamin halfway. Thinking of Little Bean's advice, Pudding pulled Liao Mukin to a corner. There's a buffet here. Take whatever you want and leave as soon as you're done. Boss, do you really not welcome me? Liao Mukin smiled on the surface, but in fact, he felt a little sour in his heart. Pudding's face was cold. When she said those words, it was as if she was chasing a dog. If it weren't for his thick skin, he really wouldn't have been able to swallow his pride and immediately turn to leave. I didn't invite you. All right, I'll eat something quietly and then leave. You have a lot of guests in your house. Go do your work, don't worry about me, I won't cause trouble. Seeing that Pudding didn't seem to want to accompany him, Liao Mukin took a plate and planned to eat something. You better mean what you say. Pudding glanced at him and then turned around. At the door was Jiang Xiaowei, who was late. Xiaowei, where's Wei Liao? Gao Ran happened to be at the door. Seeing her alone, he couldn't help but feel a little strange. He's still talking to a client. I don't think he can come. I'm the only one here today. Just in time. Come and sit down, Sister Xiaowei. Qi Ning also held Jiang Xiaowei's arm very intimately. Just as they were about to sit down, Pudding came over and took the initiative to help Jiang Xiaowei get a set of cutlery. When she looked up and saw Pudding, her eyes were a little complicated. She actually really wanted Pudding and Yun Chu to meet and talk alone, but... Chapter 4865. Thank you, Pudding. Auntie Xiaowei, eat more. The food tonight is especially delicious. Pudding smiled elegantly. Yes, I'll eat more. Pudding, yes. Have you contacted Yun Chu? Jiang Xiaowei probed. Pudding's expression froze slightly, and then she smiled awkwardly. Not yet, but I heard from my brother that they met in Germany not long ago. Yun Chu seems to be very busy. You guys grew up together, and there's nothing that can't be resolved. In other words, even if there's no possibility of development between you two, you'll still be friends in the future, right? Yes, Auntie. Yun Chu and I are friends no matter what. Pudding didn't want to disappoint her elders. She could tell that Auntie Xiaowei had been very good to her all these years. Auntie Xiaowei even favored her more than Little Bean. Perhaps it was because she had long believed that Little Bean and Yun Chu were a couple. Therefore, in this situation, she felt quite guilty. Okay, let's eat. We'll talk about this later. Seeing that Pudding's attitude was good, Jiang Xiaowei felt that there might be a chance between the two children. After all, she could tell from her son's eyes that he couldn't let go. Otherwise, he wouldn't have suddenly returned to the country on the eve of her coming-of-age ceremony. It was obvious how important Pudding's coming-of-age ceremony was to him. Liao Mukin was indeed obedient. He hid in the corner and didn't attract Huamin's attention, nor did he cause any commotion. He sat quietly and ate his dinner, enjoying it quite a lot. Perhaps he was too engrossed in his meal, so he didn't notice the person behind him. Hey! A girl's voice sounded behind him. He turned around and was about to call out, "Boss," when he suddenly realized that this girl's clothes were different from his boss's. Her hairstyle was also different. Upon closer inspection, he noticed that her temperament was also different. Oh, I know. You're my boss's sister. Congratulations, you even know how to answer first. Little Bean smiled and sat down beside Liao Mukin as if she was familiar with him. Liao Mukin had been at GK for a long time, but Little Bean, who liked to gossip and chase after celebrities, rarely interacted with Liao Mukin. It could even be said that this was the first time the two of them had met alone. Subconsciously, Little Bean didn't want to see this person. She didn't want to think about handsome Su and be sad. Just like Pudding, Little Bean's feelings for Su Yu were very deep. Sometimes, Pudding would face it, but Little Bean only wanted to escape. Looking at Liao Mukin's face from such a close distance, Little Bean realized that he really did have handsome Su's charm. After only 3 seconds, Little Bean felt a lump in her throat and lowered her head. What happened to you? Not in a good mood. Oh, it's not that. It's just that there are a lot of people at home these days, so I'm a little tired. Little Bean tried to lower her voice. You really look like my boss. Liao Mukin sighed. Isn't that obvious? We're twins. If we don't look like each other, why would we be twins? Little Bean laughed. You have a different personality too. You're more cheerful. My boss has a different face every day. She's bitter and hateful. It's like everyone owes her 8 million yuan. Liao Mukin bit his chopsticks and started to eat the black pudding. That's not right. With my sister's current wealth, owing her 8 million won't make her angry. It'll probably be 800 million. After Little Bean said this, Liao Mukin also laughed. By the way, did my sister bring you here? Little Bean asked casually, but in reality, she wanted to know if Pudding did it on purpose. However, Liao Mukin shook his head. No, I shamelessly came here. My boss had no choice but to let me in. Why did you do that? Little Bean froze. Because I like my boss. He still said this in a joking manner. Little Bean was even more shocked when she heard this. Chapter 4866. Little Bean was obviously even more shocked by Liao Mukin's words. Really? Don't lie to me. This world is so strange. What I usually tell the media is all lies. I don't mean it, but the media and fans believe me. Now that I'm telling you the truth, you don't believe me. No, I just think that it's a little too sudden, abrupt. Do you think someone as excellent as your sister doesn't deserve to be liked? Liao Mukin thought Little Bean was very cute. Of course not. My sister is excellent, but you and her. Little Bean hesitated and didn't finish her sentence. Liao Mukin wasn't stupid and knew what she meant. He smiled slightly, put down the teacup in his hand, and wiped the corner of his mouth. I know. You want to say that I'm not good enough for her. After all, my family background is not good. I'm not from a famous family, and I'm not very good-looking. My wealth is nothing compared to hers, and I'm a few years older than her. Liao Mukin laughed at himself. That's not what I meant. It's hard for people to get close to my sister. Little Bean looked at Liao Mukin seriously. Hard doesn't mean it's impossible. Sincerity can move metal and stone. Okay, if you're so patient, then keep trying. But don't say I didn't warn you. Be careful not to break your glass heart. Sorry, my heart isn't glass. It's diamond, Liao Mukin teased. If a diamond is damaged over time, it will also shatter into pieces. You don't have confidence in me. Liao Mukin looked at Little Bean and smiled bitterly. No, I don't have confidence in my sister. She's... Anyway, good luck. Oh, right, there's one more thing. I want to ask you. Little Bean finally told Liao Mukin why she came to see him. What? If possible, please stay away from my mother. Don't let her see you or notice you. As for the reason, don't ask. I have my reasons, okay? Liao Mukin didn't think it was difficult, so he nodded slightly. Thank you. Then, Little Bean turned around and left. Her conversation with Liao Mukin was a little secretive, so no one noticed. Liao Mukin did abide by the gentleman's agreement and did not let Huamin notice him again. Before he left, he really wanted to say goodbye to Pudding. But from afar, he saw Pudding standing beside a couple of old men. She was happily talking about something, and from time to time, she would mischievously stick out her tongue. That kind of scene could never be seen in the company. In the company, Pudding was just like her father. She always had a cold face. Although she was young, everyone was afraid of her. Liao Mukin didn't know that the old couple that Pudding was coaxing was the Su couple. He just envied those people from the bottom of his heart. If one day, Pudding could also put down her mask and smile at him without fear, he would be very happy, right? Liao Mukin thought as he walked out in a low-key manner. He didn't expect to meet the young master of the Qin family here. Although Qin Guoguo was young, he wasn't short at all. He leaned against the door lazily. Leaving so soon? Yeah, I'm full. Liao Mukin was also puzzled. It was their first time meeting, but they seemed to be very familiar with each other. He knew this kid. He had seen him in photos. There was a family photo of 5 in President Qin and President Qin's office. This kid was standing behind the chairman's wife. He must be the legendary young master of the Qin family, Qin Yuyao. Don't you want to say goodbye to my sister before you leave? Qin Guoguo asked him. Chapter 4867. It's okay. My boss is very busy and won't pay attention to me. Okay. Bye. Bye. Liao Mukin waved his hand. Will you come tomorrow? Qin Guoguo continued to ask him. That depends on my boss. I heard that invitations to the coming-of-age ceremony are very hard to come by. So many rich people in the city can't make it. I think I'll have to depend on my luck. Liao Mukin felt that Pudding's attitude towards him today was neither warm nor cold, as if she didn't welcome him. Why would she let an extra person like him come to the coming-of-age ceremony? If you want to come, you can call me. I'll bring you in, Qin Guoguo said word for word. Liao Mukin was stunned. Are you surprised? Qin Guogua smiled when he saw Huamian's surprised expression. Indeed. I'm flattered. This is the first time we've met. There's no reason for you to be so nice to me. If I told you that I feel very familiar with you, as if I've known you for a long time, would you believe me? Qin Guogua asked. Before Liao Mukin could respond, Qin Guogua smiled again. I don't believe it myself. Then, Qin Guogua turned around and walked inside as if he hadn't said anything to Liao Mukin. Huamian stood there, dumbfounded. He thought to himself, the Qin family is so weird. Pudding and Little Bean are like that, and so is Qin Guogua. As for why Qin Guogua was so interested in Liao Mukin, who he had just met for the first time, first, it was because of the rumors about him and his sister. Second, he saw his mother walk towards the kid curiously, but his sister hurriedly stopped her. Third, when he saw the kid's face, he felt like he had seen him before. It was an indescribable feeling. If Pudding and Little Bean enjoyed Su Yu's love for a few years, then Qin Guogua was actually sad. When he was in Huamin's stomach, Huamin was already in danger. When he was about to be born, something happened to Su Yu. He had never met Su Yu face to face, so he had no idea what Su Yu had sacrificed to protect him and his mother when he was in Huamin's stomach. Therefore, he did not know what Su Yu looked like, nor did he remember Su Yu. Regarding his name, the U in the middle of Qin Yuyao's name, the family seemed to have forgotten the original intention of naming him. Liao Mukin left South Hill Manor quietly. After he got into the van, he sent Pudding a WeChat message. Boss, I'm leaving. Thank you for dinner. I'm very full. Pudding was chatting with the two elders of the Su family, making them happy. When he saw the WeChat message, his eyes darkened, but he did not reply. He put down his phone and continued to accompany the two elders of the Su family. That was why gossip was unreliable. It was rumored that Pudding and Liao Mukin were in love with each other. Now, all they had to do was wait for Qin Chu and Huamin's approval. But what was the real situation? Not only did Pudding not have a good impression of Liao Mukin, she even had a little bit of hostility. It was the feeling of rejection. After dinner and seeing everyone off, it was already 10 p.m. Lu Yan was a person who could not stay idle. She brought her husband, daughter, and even the twins and Qin Guogua. The whole family went to the nightclub. Fortunately, the nightclub was one of Tang Chuan's businesses and was not dangerous, so Huamin agreed. It was late at night. Huamin finished cleaning up with the maid and leaned on Qin Chu's shoulder tiredly. Honey, I'm so hungry. Why do I feel like I'm not full? Then let's go out for supper. Now. Huamin was surprised. Chapter 48-68. Qin Chu nodded. It's already 10:30. Huamin looked at her watch. So will I get fat if I eat at this time? Huamin smiled. You're already a mother of 3. What's there to be afraid of? Eat your fill first, Qin Chu coaxed her. What do you want to eat? Huamin showed great interest. She also revealed her true colors as a foodie. Actually, Huamin couldn't be blamed. With so many people at home, she definitely had to entertain the guests first. She was afraid that everyone wouldn't eat well. Therefore, in order to take care of everyone, she didn't eat much herself. Tonight's meal was mainly Western food. Most of it was steak and foie gras. Huamin actually didn't like steak very much, especially the medium-rare kind. There were still traces of blood in it, so she really couldn't taste it. It wasn't as good as Chinese food. Therefore, at this moment, after busying herself, her stomach was naturally growling. Xian's ramen, do you want to go? Chin Chu lowered his head and asked her with a doting expression. Yes, yes, yes. Other things were fine, but Oaxayan's ramen was a temptation that Huamin couldn't resist since she was a girl. Not only was the ramen delicious, but it was also cheap. The price hadn't changed all these years, and the taste of the beef was also a taste that others couldn't make. Chin Chu knew his wife too well. A single Oaxayan's ramen was enough to coax her into following him out obediently. In order not to attract the attention of the media and make headlines, Chin Chu went out in a low-key manner. He only drove the most inconspicuous car in the garage, a Phaeton. The car was very long, but the interior was very impressive. It was also worth more than 1,000,000 yuan. There was a saying that went, "Don't be afraid of Mercedes-Benz and Land Rovers, but be afraid of Volkswagen with letters." A Phaeton was a Volkswagen with letters. It looked like an ordinary person, but it was actually a noble among the masses. It was a godlike existence. The couple drove out of South Hill Manor in a low-key manner. It wasn't easy to have a chance to eat with his wife alone. Chin Chu was in a good mood. She turned on the music in the car. Accompanied by the evening breeze, it was a different kind of mood. Chin Chu was nostalgic. Just like Huamin, he liked some old songs. It was a name that no one had ever heard of. Perhaps Chin Chu was trying to cater to his wife's mood, but he actually played the song, "Silence is Golden." It was one of Zhang Guorong's classic works. Back then, Chin Chu had also personally sung it for Huamin. It could be considered as a sweet memory of their relationship. As soon as she heard this song, Huamin immediately started singing along. Although her Cantonese pronunciation was not very accurate, and she would occasionally slip out of tune, it didn't affect her good mood. As Chin Chu drove, he glanced at the side of his wife's face from time to time. At this moment, he was extremely satisfied. What he wanted was to grow old with Huamin. Now, they had been together for more than 20 years. They met and fell in love when they were teenagers. Now that they were 40 years old, time slipped away in the blink of an eye. Chin Chu wasn't afraid of growing old, nor was he afraid of his wife's aging appearance. He was only afraid that he wouldn't grow old with his wife. At the entrance of Oaxayan's ramen, the noodle shop was still open. Under the dim light, there were still groups of young people eating supper. Although it was already late autumn and the weather was very cold, it didn't stop everyone's passion for ramen. The former owner of Oaxayan's ramen had a stroke 5 years ago and was hospitalized at Southside. It was Huamin who personally treated him. After he was discharged, he stayed at home to recuperate. Now, the noodle shop was inherited by his daughter. She was a very lively girl, and the noodles she made were as delicious as her father's. "Uncle Chin, Auntie Mian, you're here." "Yeah, same old, 2 bowls of ramen and beef," Chin Chu said. "Okay, wait a moment, it'll be right up." The girl was very diligent. Huamin looked at the familiar noodle shop and the somewhat old Second High across the street, and sighed in her heart. "Honey, do you think that if I didn't go to Second High back then and went to another school, we wouldn't have met?" Chapter 48-69. Chin Chu replied domineeringly, "But there are no ifs in life. You can't predict what hasn't happened yet. All I see is the current outcome." "Fine, fine. You really don't want to be taken advantage of." Huamin smiled as he reached out and pinched Chin Chu's face. All these years, only Huamin dared to pinch Chin Chu's face so recklessly. Even the twins didn't dare to bully their father like this. "The noodles are ready. Uncle Chin, Auntie Mian, enjoy." "Yu Hong, how's your father's recovery?" Huamin looked up and asked the girl. "Dad's recovering well. He's living in the countryside with Mom. The air there is good. He exercises for 3 hours every day and can already walk 8 or 9 meters by himself. That's good. Yes, Dad is very grateful. If it weren't for your treatment, he probably wouldn't have recovered so quickly. Don't mention it. Even if your father and I don't know each other, I will still treat him with care. As a doctor, I will treat every patient seriously. Tell your father to never drink again. Keep warm and don't catch a cold. Okay, Auntie Mian. Thank you. The girl bowed deeply to Huamin politely and then went into the kitchen to cook. Huamin and Chin Chu ate simple ramen and pickled vegetables while drinking ancient soda. These things were the best tools to bring them back to their youth. Almost every time they ate here, they would remember something from their school days. Chin Chu thought that his Mian would talk about something interesting today. But she didn't. After a few bites of noodles, she suddenly thought of something and asked him, "Honey, there's a very popular artist under our company. He's a little boy. What's his name?" "Are you talking about Liao Mukin?" Chin Chu was curious. "Yes, him. His name is Liao Mukin." Huamin confirmed. Chin Chu nodded. Huamin put down his chopsticks and picked up his phone. Soon, he found the kid's information on Baidu Encyclopedia. Then, after skimming through it, she clicked on one of his daily photos. Huamin looked at that face with a complicated expression. "What's wrong, Mian?" "Honey, look at this face, don't you think it's familiar?" Huamin picked up her phone and showed Chin Chu Liao Mukin's photo. Unfortunately, Chin Chu did not feel that way. Perhaps it was because he had seen Liao Mukin many times. When this kid first came to the company, he was highly praised. Chin Chu often attended events with Pudding and Chin Chu, so he wasn't surprised. "To be honest, I don't feel that way." "What's wrong, Mian? Do you know this kid?" Chin Chu was curious about his wife's reaction. "I don't think so. This is the first time I've heard of his name, but today, when I saw him for the first time at our house, I felt strange. I had a strange feeling in my heart. It felt like I should know this person and have known him for a long time. But that can't be right. He's only in his early 20s. Do you know his family background? What do his parents do for a living? Could he be an old acquaintance of ours?" Huamin was curious. "His family background is average, and he's not from here. His parents are ordinary workers. I think his father works on the railroad, and his mother runs a supermarket. His parents came to the company before and participated in our events and interviews. I've seen them before, but I don't know them. Then what's going on? Why do I have this strange feeling?" Huamin looked at the kid's photo again and couldn't figure it out. Chapter 4870. Maybe it's just my imagination. You've been busy at Southside recently. Plus, you've been preparing for the 2 children's coming-of-age ceremony. Maybe you're too tired. Hearing Chin Chu's comforting words, Huamin nodded doubtfully. Then, he put away his phone and continued eating his noodles. At the Tang family's private villa. After Tang Chuan and Qin Ning got married, they bought a private villa in the wealthy area not far from Chin Chu's house. After Qin Ning gave birth to her son, she became a mother in the Tang family. In order to see her grandson, the old lady of the Tang family wanted to worship her daughter-in-law. Qin Ning wasn't a ruthless person. Slowly, her relationship with Tang Chuan's family improved. Tang Tianjiao became the favorite of his grandparents and the entire Tang family. That was why he became a devil at such a young age. Qin Ning suddenly felt inferior. Why were other children so obedient and sensible? Why was her nephew, Qin Yuyao, like an elegant young master when they were both in their teens? Not only was he good-looking and had a high EQ, but he also had the introverted personality of a brother and the steadiness of a sister-in-law. Why was her son as happy as a mutant husky? Because of this, she even complained that Tang Chuan's genes weren't good and that he was a hindrance. Tang Tianjiao finished dinner at South Hill Manor. After returning with his parents, he took a shower and was about to go to bed. However, when he saw Little Bean's post, his sleepiness instantly disappeared. Little Bean posted a big photo. It was in a dark private room in the clubhouse. Pudding and Little Bean were in the front row, and Qin Yuyao was in the middle. Qiao Tuanchuan and Qiao Yuanyuan were on both sides. The 5 good-looking children were gathered together, and the scene was very lively. They were even allowed to drink. Tang Tianjiao realized that each of them was holding a bottle of beer in their hands. They were having a great time. Children under the age of 16 were not allowed to drink in the family. Tang Tianjiao drank secretly once and was beaten up by his father, Tang Chuan. His butt was swollen. After that, he didn't dare to try it again. Now, these few people were swaggering around and drinking. If he remembered correctly, Qiao Tuanchuan and Qiao Yuanyuan were only 12 years old. They were the same age as him. Why could they drink? Thinking of this, Tang Tianjiao threatened, "Sister Little Bean, I'm going to tell Auntie that you guys were drinking. We'll be 18 after the coming-of-age ceremony. Will my mom care about us?" Little Bean retorted. "But my cousin is still young, he's only 14 years old." Young Master Tang wasn't convinced. Instead, he was filled with envy and jealousy. "My brother was specially approved by my mother. What does it have to do with you?" Tang Tianjiao was once again insulted, and the feeling was extremely uncomfortable, so he continued to nitpick. "Then Qiao Tuanchuan and Qiao Yuanyuan are only 12, the same age as me. My auntie's family is very relaxed. Qiao Tuanchuan and Qiao Yuanyuan have tasted all the famous wines in the world since they were 8 years old. Now, they know the name of the wine just by smelling it, and they won't get drunk even after 1,000 cups. Aw. Sick fucking pervert." Tang Tianjiao felt that the Qiao family was way too sick. Qiao Tuanchuan and Qiao Yuanyuan's parents actually allowed them to start drinking at the age of 8. No wonder the two sisters were so powerful. Whenever they attacked, they would definitely injure someone. After thinking about it, Tang Tianjiao thickened his skin and sent a private message to Little Bean. "Beautiful, gentle, kind, and adorable, the invincible sister Little Bean, if you have something to say, then say it." Little Bean didn't hold back. Over the years, she had often argued with this naughty cousin. "Can you bring me?" Before Tang Tianjiao could finish, Little Bean blocked his message. "I'm not done yet." Young Master Tang felt wronged. "Don't say any more. I can't bring you here. Why? Am I not your most beloved cousin?" Young Master Tang began to act coquettishly and cutely. Chapter 4871. Little Bean replied straightforwardly, "You've never been. You hurt my feelings, sis." Ha 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 ha. Little Bean laughed devilishly on the other end of the line. At this moment, young Master Tang anxiously went downstairs in his pajamas. He found that his parents were still drinking red wine and watching a movie. "Why aren't you asleep yet?" Tang Chuan turned around and saw his son coming downstairs. "Dad, you have to help me this time. They don't like me, who?" Tang Chuan was also confused when he heard this. After that, young Master Tang told his father everything that had happened. Tang Chuan immediately slammed the table and exploded. "These inhumane people, why didn't they take my son with them? Don't get involved." You're not on the same level as Chao Tuanchuan and Chao Yuanyuan. Your childhood was different. Qi Ning mocked her son. She knew what kind of person Lu Yan was. Her way of educating her children was strange. Mom, even you're laughing at me. Don't be afraid, son. I'll call them now. Tang Chuan took care of his son for the first time. He called Pudding's cell phone. 3 minutes later, Tang Chuan hung up the phone and smiled slightly. Pudding will pick you up at the door. Go, son. I'll ask the driver to take you there. Wow, Dad, I love you. Tang Tianzhao hugged Tang Chuan's neck excitedly and kissed him. It's okay, it's okay. It's not a big deal. Dad, you're so good. You didn't act like my dad today. Bullshit, if I'm not like your dad, who is? Old Wang next door. As soon as he finished speaking, Tang Chuan was kicked in the butt. Qi Ning didn't show any mercy. I'll stop fooling around. I'm leaving, Dad. I definitely won't drink. I'm just going to have fun. It's okay, you can drink less, Tang Chuan reminded him. Damn. I'm flattered. Dad, if you keep up this state, I'll love you for 10,000 years. Tang Tianzhao felt that today was a great day. His father, who was usually strict with him and would beat him up for no reason, had turned into a loving father today. What was going on? However, he didn't have time to think too much about it. He just wanted to go out and play. Tang Chuan called Pudding. After all, he was Pudding's uncle, so he had to give him face. Therefore, Pudding immediately agreed and brought Tang Tianzhao along to have fun. Son, come back soon. Don't be too crazy, okay? Before leaving, Qi Ning was still a little worried and kept reminding him. I know, Mom. I won't embarrass you, Qi Ning. Tang Tianzhao hurriedly changed his clothes and left. His chauffeur drove him to the club where Lu Yan and the others were. Qi Ning looked at her husband, who was acting out of character. She narrowed her eyes and questioned, Did you take the wrong medicine today? Why are you pleading for your son? This isn't like you. Hee hee. I naturally have my reasons. See, I knew there was something fishy going on. Our son is too naive. He might believe you, but I don't. Tell me, what do you want? Qi Ning leaned against the sofa and looked at Tang Chuan, who was smiling mischievously. Honey. Ever since Tianzhao was born, don't you feel that something is missing between us? What? Qi Ning froze. Before this kid was born, we did it once every 2 days. After he was born, we only did it once a week. Tang Chuan's tone was full of grievance. In the end, Qi Ning finally understood what he meant. Her cheeks instantly turned red. What nonsense are you talking about? I'm not talking nonsense. This kid affected the harmony of our sex life. So, today, I sent him away. Honey. Are you going to reward me? With that, Tang Chuan pounced on Qi Ning, who was on the sofa. Chapter 4872. Even if Tang Tianzhao was beaten to death, he would never have thought that his father would be so abnormal today. What was the reason? He didn't care too much about it. It wasn't easy for him to get permission to go out, so he wanted to run to the end of the world. Teenagers were all rebellious and didn't want to go home or listen to their parents. Tang Tianzhao was especially naughty. Although he was naughty, he didn't do anything out of line. Qi Ning had a headache, but she acquiesced. In the dim private room of the nightclub, Lu Yan and Xiao Fei sat in a corner, showing him the new electronic products they had invented recently. Their voices weren't loud and were drowned out by the singing. Xiao Fei put an arm around Lu Yan's shoulder, and they were as intimate as when they first started dating. Xiao Tuanchuan and Xiao Yuanyuan were used to the public display of affection and could calmly watch their parents show off their love. Little Bean was in a good mood because Gao Buiyuan was back and she had one more follower. She lay on Gao Buiyuan's lap and played games on her phone. Gao Buiyuan even peeled nuts and fed them to Little Bean. "Sis, nuts make you fat," Qin Guogua said. "Nonsense. Nuts are good for the brain." Little Bean rolled her eyes. "You're smart enough. You don't need to eat more." Qin Guogua continued to smirk. "Don't try to fool me. I'm the dumbest here. If I don't eat more, I won't catch up with you guys even if I ride a rocket." Of course, Little Bean knew she was the dumbest among them. She thought she was smart, but compared to Pudding, Qin Guogua, Xiao Tuanchuan, and Xiao Yuanyuan, she was really clumsy. "It's okay. I'll be at the bottom for you." Gao Buiyuan chuckled. As long as Little Bean was happy, he could turn on his self-deprecating mode anytime. Little Bean was very protective of Gao Buiyuan and couldn't bear to see him being ridiculed. So, she immediately said, "I don't want you to be at the bottom. You have to be something. After all, you're a student of the Public Security University. Look at your grandpa and dad. You have to be at the top in the future." "Okay. I'll try my best." Gao Buiyuan continued to smile as if he was never angry with Little Bean. "What's Yunchu doing now?" Qin Guogua's words seemed to freeze the air. "Are you touching a sore spot?" Xiao Yuanyuan chuckled as she looked at Qin Guogua. "Not really. My sister is very calm. She won't be affected by what others say," Qin Guogua said and deliberately looked at Pudding. Indeed, she was holding the microphone and singing Jay Chou's Red Dust in very seriously. Her mood was not affected at all. Qin Guogua thought of Liao Mukin, who came to the house today, and Wei Yunchu, who was abroad. She suddenly felt conflicted for her sister. Of course, everyone hoped that she could get together with Wei Yunchu. After all, they were childhood sweethearts who grew up together. But, with Pudding's personality, she had been in a cold war with Wei Yunchu for 5 years. Could they really reconcile so easily? Qin Guogua liked Wei Yunchu very much. After all, he called him Big Brother. Therefore, he always wanted to do something. He took out his phone and secretly sent a WeChat message. There were no words, only a picture of Pudding's side profile as she sang. Pudding's hair was very long, black and straight. She was wearing a straight red miniskirt. Her collarbones were clearly visible, making her look a little sexy. She only had a black Patek Philippe watch on her wrist. It was worth 1,000,000 yuan. She rarely smiled. Or rather, it was rare for people to catch a smile on her face. Little Bean, on the other hand, was very willing to smile. Whether it was at the hospital or at home, she was always carefree. Pudding, on the other hand, was always worried. On the other side, Wei Yunchu was about to lie down and sleep when his phone rang. He slowly picked it up and his eyes became deep. Chapter 4873. He instantly recognized Pudding. Even though he only saw her side profile, he could still recognize her. It had been 5 years since he last saw her. She hadn't changed much, but she hadn't changed much either. Her facial features hadn't changed, but her temperament had. When they separated 5 years ago, they were only 13 years old. At that time, they were already mature and knew what it meant to like each other. Wei Yunchu was almost 100% sure that Pudding would go abroad with him, and then they would spend a lot of good times together. But at that time, he realized that Pudding was always preoccupied. It wasn't because she was depressed. It was because there was someone in her heart, and Pudding seemed to know this person. But in the end, she didn't ask who this person was. Because that wasn't important anymore. No matter who Pudding loved, as long as it wasn't him, he couldn't bear the consequences. Pudding didn't give a clear answer to his confession. She hesitated. So he was hurt. Such an arrogant young man who had never failed before was defeated by Pudding. One could imagine the impact. After all, he was only 13 years old. The way he handled things could never be as mature as an adult. So Wei Yunchu chose to go abroad alone. Later, Tian Tian followed and stuck to him like glue. Many elders thought that there was something going on between him and Tian Tian, but the truth? Wei Yunchu had never looked at Tian Tian, whether it was before or now. Once, Tian Tian got drunk and took the initiative to ask Wei Yunchu, "Is it because I'm an orphan that you look down on me? I don't have a prominent family like Pudding, and I don't have Pudding's exquisite beauty. I can't give you a strong future. Is that why you look down on me?" Wei Yunchu didn't want to answer such a boring question, but seeing Tiantian's obsession and pain, he decided to tell her the answer. He said, "If you and Pudding's families were switched, you were a rich young lady and she was an orphan, then I wouldn't dislike you." Tian Tian asked him in pain, "Why?" Wei Yunchu said directly, "Because she's Pudding. Because she's Pudding, no matter her status, appearance, or upbringing, she's my love. Because you're not her, no matter if you're the president's daughter or a rich young lady, it has nothing to do with me." After that, Tian Tian disappeared for a while. Although they were in the same school, they didn't see each other often. One of Wei Yunchu's characteristics was that if he didn't like someone, he wouldn't give them any hope. He had always thought that, like Bui Yuan, he had already decided on a wife since he was young. Who would have thought that there would be any deviations? Therefore, the sudden incident 5 years ago was too much for the two 13-year-old children to handle and they lost contact with each other. He spent the past 5 years in silence. As for his return this time, he had been conflicted for a long time. He was afraid that when he came back, even if Pudding looked at him, she would be indifferent. She was afraid that the person who had been in her heart for so many years was still irreplaceable. Even so, he still wanted to fight for a chance for himself. After all, he didn't want to miss such an important moment in her life. After thinking for a while, he replied to Qin Guogua, "She's still so beautiful. So you won't give up on her, right?" Qin Guogua asked. Wei Yunchu did not reply. There were many things that he already knew the answer to. Naturally, he would not casually tell others. Chapter 48-74. In a mansion in the city, wearing a cotton nightgown, Han Yueyao leaned against the sofa with a glass of red wine in her hand. "You shouldn't drink so much. You have a schedule tomorrow." A tall and gentle man with slightly curly hair stood beside her. This was Han Yueyao's manager, who had been with her since before she became famous. For many years, although Han Yueyao had been involved in scandals, she had never really been in love. This man had been with her for more than 10 years and had never married or had children. Their relationship had been reported by some unscrupulous media, but because there was no evidence, it was left unsettled. "Ah Mu, bring me another bottle," Han Yueyao ordered him after finishing the wine in her glass. "Don't drink anymore. I can't sleep. I've been feeling very tired recently," she said. "If you really feel stressed, I'll cancel all my schedules next week. You have enough money now, you have fame, and you've won so many awards. Your life is complete. My life is complete. No, not yet. I keep feeling like I seem to have forgotten someone." Han Yueyao burst into tears at this point. She was even sadder than Huamin because Huamin could still remember some things when he saw Liao Mukin. Han Yueao only vaguely remembered that someone lived in her heart, but she didn't know what that person looked like, how old he was, or what he said. All these years she would feel pain in her heart every night. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't remember anything. She didn't feel anything when she saw Liao Mukin. Perhaps Han Yueao hadn't known Su Yu for long enough. Therefore, she didn't have deep memories like Huamin. Are you having a relapse again? I'll make an appointment with a doctor for you tomorrow. Mu always thought that Han Yueao was hysterical and always fantasized about things and people that didn't exist. When it was serious, he took her to see a psychiatrist and a Chinese medicine doctor. He prescribed her some medicine that could help her sleep peacefully. It would more or less relieve her symptoms. Seeing that she was causing trouble again, he was very worried. No, I plan to see Sister Mian tomorrow. Han Yueao didn't remember why she trusted Huamin so much. She was closer to Pudding and Little Bean. She couldn't remember the process, but she had been in contact with them all these years. 2:30 in the morning, feeling sleepy, Lu Yen suggested going back to South Hill Manor to sleep. However, the children all said that they were hungry and wanted to go out to eat. Lu Yen waved her hand. You guys go and eat. Then go back. Are they going alone? Xiao Fei was a little worried. What are you afraid of? Pudding is here, isn't she? She's an adult. Then, Lu Yen and Xiao Fei left the nightclub. Xiao Tuanchuan, Xiao Yuan, Teng Tianjiao, Gao Bui Yuan, Little Bean, Qin Guogua, and Pudding. The group of 7 decided to go eat something. Let me take you to a Cantonese breakfast. I know a restaurant that's open 24 hours a day, Pudding suggested. Sis, I want to eat barbecue and seafood. These words were said by Xiao Tuanchuan. She rarely spoke, but her words carried a lot of weight. Why do you want barbecue all of a sudden? Pudding was surprised. Are you sure you don't mind that place being dirty and messy? It's not a high-end restaurant. Don't regret it if you go there. Little Bean smirked. Chapter 4875. I heard from Uncle Lai that the food stalls here are very delicious. It's very lively. Lai had told Xiao Tuanchuan that she had never been to a food stall before. Now that her parents weren't around, she wanted to have some fun. That place is a bit messy. I don't recommend it. Qin Guogua had experienced it before and didn't recommend it. It was better to find a 5-star private restaurant to eat quietly and enjoy the night view. The messier it is, the more interesting it is. Sis, take us there. Who knows when we'll come again. Hearing that her sister wanted to go, Xiao Yuan followed suit. Okay, but don't cause any trouble. Pudding knew that her 2 sisters were very difficult to deal with. If she brought the 2 little bombs of the Qiao family with her, she was worried that they would cause trouble everywhere. We won't cause any trouble. When Xiao Tuanchuan smiled, her small canine teeth were very cute. Tang Tianjiao couldn't help but touch her mouth. Fuck, these are real teeth. They're so unique. Can you give them to me? Do you want to die? Xiao Tuanchuan casually punched Tang Tianjiao, making him cry out in pain. Sis, let's go to the food street near Qingshui Road. I heard there are more people there, Little Bean suggested. I don't recommend going there. There are local gangs there that collect protection fees and watch over the place. It's very messy, Gao Buiyuan said this time. The Gao family was a family of police officers. He had followed his father around since he was a child and knew the situation in every district. It would have been better if he hadn't mentioned it. Now that he mentioned it, the two from the Chiao family were even more eager to try. Wow, gangs are so exciting. We want to see it. Let's go there, sis, please. The Chiao sisters acted coquettishly and cutely as if they were harmless to humans and animals. Pudding couldn't bear to refuse them and took them there. However, if Pudding had known what would happen, she would never have brought them along. Who would have thought that this group of second-generation rich kids would cause such a big mess on their first solo mission? The 7 of them drove to the food street. In order not to attract attention, they parked their car in a parking lot far away. Then, they walked for a full 2 miles before arriving at the seafood stall. This was the most crowded place in the city after 10 o'clock at night. Because it was said that it opened at 9 p.m. every night until 6 a.m. in the morning. Many people who were working the night shift liked to come here to eat. It was cheap, had a wide variety of food, and most importantly, it was lively. It was already past 3 in the morning. Unexpectedly, there were still so many people here. The smell of barbecue, crayfish, and beer was everywhere. Almost every restaurant would have a few tables of guests. Some would play finger-guessing games, some would compete in drinking, some would sing, and some would even record short videos for internet celebrities. The group of people kept walking until they reached a shop with the most customers. Then, they stopped. Let's take this one. I heard it's not bad, Pudding said. Isn't this an internet celebrity shop? I heard that a month ago, the superstar Liao Mukin came to eat here. Then, he suddenly became famous. The boss even took a picture with him. Tang Tianzhao gossiped. What is Liao Mukin? He just works for my sister. Do you really have to be like this? Little Bean chuckled and changed the topic. She didn't want people to keep mentioning this person in front of Pudding. The group of people chatted and laughed as they walked in. However, he did not expect that the moment he entered the door, he had already been targeted. Big Brother Tao, look at that group of people. There are 2 pairs of twins, and they are so damn good-looking. Wouldn't it be great if we tied them up and gave them to you? Above the food stall, a shifty-eyed man said to the bald man beside him with a fawning expression. Chapter 4876. The 7 of them attracted a lot of attention when they walked in. They were all good-looking men and women. Because of their height, it was hard to tell that the oldest of them was less than 19 years old, Gao Buiyuan. The youngest was 12 years old, the 2 sisters of the Chiao family in Tang Tianzhao. This restaurant was called Mao Dada Food Stall. It was the most popular and occupied the largest space on the street. Many people came for supper. There were many live seafood, crayfish, and all kinds of fish at the door. After sitting down, Pudding stood up. What do you want to eat? I'll order it. It's your treat. Can we eat as much as we want? Tang Tianzhao looked at Pudding with a cheeky smile. Sure. Eat as much as you want. Pudding smiled, looking happy. Sis, I want crayfish. Spicy, and 13 spice. I want all of them, Little Bean said. She was like a fighter among foodies. Even the crayfish had 3 flavors. You're so nosy. Pudding glared at Little Bean. Sis, I want edamame, spiced peanuts, and conch, Qin Guogua said. He had been in Germany for a long time and had mostly eaten grilled pork shoulder and sausages. Over there was very little variety. When he went to a Chinese restaurant, the taste was very unauthentic. She didn't know why, but when she went overseas, even the most original dumplings in her hometown tasted different from the original. So, Qin Guogua decided to indulge himself in supper this time. What about you, Buiyuan? Pudding glanced at Gao Buiyuan. I'm okay with anything. I'll eat whatever you order. Tuanchuan and Yuanyuan. Pudding called their names together, which was funny. Sis, I don't know much about it. Just order whatever you think is good. Xiao Tuanchuan and Xiao Yuanyuan's food in the military academy was strictly controlled by the instructor. Now that they were back on the island, Lu Yan didn't allow them to overeat, so they didn't know much about the local snacks. Seeing that they all wanted her to make the decision, Pudding didn't refuse. After all, she would be the one paying the bill. Just like that, Pudding went to the door alone and looked at all the aquatic products. Beauty, what would you like to eat? One of the lackeys had dyed blonde hair and looked to be in his 20s. He was skinny and had dark skin. Crabs, steamed. I want 10. Bamboo prawns, boiled, 2 caddies. Stir-fried conch, 500 grams of spicy. Large conch, slice, boil, 2 caddies. Steamed scallops with garlic and vermicelli. I want 8. Crayfish, spicy, 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 13 spice, minced garlic, 1 of each of the 4 flavors. 1 set of spiced edamame, 1 set of spiced peanuts, and 1 set of cold cucumber. Oh right, I want pineapple rice. Give me 3 sets first. Although Pudding had never been here before, she could tell that it was no different from a high-end hotel. The method of cooking seafood was even simpler. Seeing that the seafood was still fresh, he ordered a lot of it. The man hurriedly wrote it down and repeated it to Pudding. After confirming that everything was correct, Pudding turned to the bar to choose a drink and beer. The blonde at the door secretly said to the boss, "Boss, there's an old spendthrift who ordered a lot of our seafood. We can make a fortune. Are you sure they're not here to dine and dash? Don't let them run away." The boss was worried. Pudding ordered a lot of food, so the total cost of the meal was about 3,000 to 4,000 yuan. 3,000 to 4,000 yuan was nothing to the rich second-generation heirs, but for the food stall owners, it was a big deal. No, that girl is dressed very formally. They're probably the young masters and young mistresses of some rich family. They're dressed in designer clothes, the blonde said with a smile. Chapter 4877. Pudding only wanted to fulfill her 2 cousins' wish and take them out for supper. She really didn't want to cause any trouble, but sometimes, trouble would come to you if you didn't cause any trouble. There were a few internet celebrities playing video games nearby. One of them, a good-looking boy, came up to them. He looked at Pudding and asked with a smile, "Miss, can I add you on WeChat?" Before Pudding could reply, Tang Tianjiao glared at him and scolded, "Get out of here. I hate internet celebrities like you the most. Are you retarded from playing video games? Do you think it's your home? Flirting with anyone you can get your hands on." After being scolded by Tang Tianjiao, the boy quickly left with an awkward expression on his face. Xiao Tuanchuan smiled. "Not bad, little Tang. You're good at scolding people. See, I've always been a bully. When it comes to scolding people, no one can beat me," Tang Tianjiao said and flipped his hair. "Okay, stop bragging. I wonder who was the one who got beaten up this morning." Little Bean laughed bitterly. "Sis, can you give me some face? There are so many people here." Little Tang rolled his eyes at Little Bean. At this time, the dishes were served one after another. The speed at which the dishes were served was very fast. After the dishes were served, the blonde stood beside Pudding and didn't leave. He seemed to have something he couldn't say. "What's wrong? Is there a problem?" Pudding turned around when she saw his strange behavior. Can we place an order now?" Our boss said that the dishes on this table are more expensive. If you don't have money after eating, before he could finish, Pudding opened her bag and took out at least 10,000 yuan. She placed it on the table. Is that enough? Yes, yes, yes. Sorry, we're just a small business. The blonde took the money and ran away. Sis, you shouldn't have taken so much. Just pay as much as you want so you don't cheat us, Little Bean said. It's okay. I'll write an invoice later. I'll go through the menu. Pudding didn't want to spend too much money. However, to her surprise, the blonde came back with only 200 yuan for Pudding. Okay, beauty, here's your change. I gave you 10,000. Pudding's face fell. Little Bean was right. This guy was so evil. That's right. Your table is 9,850 yuan, but our boss said that he'll round it off and give you a total of 9,800 yuan. Hee, is your seafood gilded? Little Bean sneered. Is your family's spicy lobster a spirit? Why is it so expensive? Chow Yuan also smiled like a flower. You've indeed ordered expensive things. The cost of seafood is high to begin with, the blonde argued. We're not tourists, we're locals. What you're doing isn't right, is it? Qin Guoguo looked at Goldie and said. It's because you're locals that I'm giving you 50 yuan. If you were tourists, you wouldn't even get this treatment. Hee, you mean, I should thank you. Tang Tianzhao was not in the mood to eat. He stood up with a swoosh, and his eyes became fierce. No, what's the meaning of this? Didn't you know that seafood was expensive before you ate it? Blondie complained. Stop arguing. After speaking, Pudding stood up slightly. She stared at Blondie and said, Give me the menu. I'll look at the price. Oh, and give me an invoice. There's no menu or invoice, Blondie's answer was straightforward. So, you want to fight? Xiao Tuanchuan clenched her fists and stood up slowly. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.